Let's get it. 580 Sports Talk coming at you on a Friday. And it's not a red Friday in the sense that there is a Chiefs game on Sunday. But with the Super Bowl 9 days away, every day is a red day. Here on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero and Spencer Dupuis up on Huntoon Hill in studio. Brendan Wierzynski joining us from parts unknown. That's a lie. He's in northeastern Oklahoma. Brendan, I know you can't tell us what hotel you're staying at, but what can you tell us about the hotel you're staying at?
I can tell you that the hotel that I am staying in, it is not the worst Eastern hotel, so that's
about as much as I can give.
It's not the worst Eastern, and that's good to know. Brendan, a safer drive for you last night following Washburn basketball, I'm told, which is a good thing to hear.
You know, it's actually incredible how much easier it is to drive, even on narrow roads and like state turnpike and all of that, when it's not completely pitch dark everywhere and there's like more than 4 inches of visibility in front of my windshield. So that was nice. Not having to just guess that I was still on the road for the entire trip was a plus.
How about that? Well, we're glad to have Brendan along. The gang's all here, even if we are not in the same space. We are all coming together to bring you 580 Sports Talk on this Friday afternoon. We appreciate you tuning in. However you are joining us, 580 WIBW, FM 104.9, online worldwide at 580WIBW.com or via our YouTube channel, 580 Sports Talk. We also stream on Twitter at our Twitter handle, which is also 580 Sports Talk. Super easy to remember. Find us on YouTube. Subscribe to the page today, and you can see all of our videos live and archived. They come right to you. So you can see our smiling and chipper faces on this Friday afternoon. We're all having a great time. We got a jam-packed show for you today. We are going to talk plenty of Super Bowl 58. We got 2 great guests lined up. Matt Derrick, our Chiefs insider, will join us at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour, as he does every Friday. We'll get Matt's perspective on that AFC Championship game victory over the Ravens, kind of put a bow on the AFC title game, and then start to look ahead to Super Bowl 58 with Matt, get his preliminary thoughts on the matchup against the 49ers. We'll also be joined today at the top of the 4 o'clock hour by Mitch Holtis, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs. We were unable to connect with Mitch in our usual time slot yesterday afternoon. If you were listening to the show and expecting to hear Mitch, we did not connect with him yesterday, but we will connect with him today. We'll talk to Mitch at about 4:06 here on the program. So looking forward to having Mitch on the show to get his perspective on the run-up to the big game. We will also hear some audio from the Chiefs today. Coordinators and players were at the podium. Travis Kelce spoke at length today. We're going to play that at the bottom of this hour. Kelce went about 13 minutes at the podium, so we'll hear what the Chiefs tight end has to say about this game going into his 4th Super Bowl as a Chief. We'll also hear later on in the show from Matt Nagy and Steve Spagnuolo. As far as game topics, we can get a high-scoring game, or are we going to get something closer to the 17-10 knockdown, drag-out defensive game that we saw the Chiefs play in the AFC Championship game? Which outcome is more likely next Sunday in Las Vegas? We'll discuss. And also, who's got the most to gain and the most to lose on Super Bowl Sunday? And beyond the obvious, whoever wins the game gains, whoever loses the game loses, there are legacies on the lines in Super Bowls. And so we'll talk about, for the Chiefs and the 49ers, who might have the most to gain, who might have the most to lose legacy-wise in Super Bowl 58. We'll also play a little Change My Mind this hour. We'll give some mea culpas, and on second thought, the 3 o'clock hour, what is wrong with you? We'll crown a short week champion in the 4 o'clock hour. Talk a little college hoops, as both KU and K-State are in action tomorrow. We'll get into some of that. We got our sports headlines at the top of the 5 o'clock hour. We are off a little early today for high school basketball. The Lewis Toyota High School Basketball Games of the Week take us tonight to the Ken Butel Activity Center at Hayden High School, where the Wildcat boys and girls host Manhattan in Centennial League action. I'll be on the call alongside the coach Larry Latimer. At about 5:45, we plan to go on with pregame coverage. But as is always the case with high school hoops, you just never know. So give or take 5:45 around that time, 5:45-ish. We'll break away from 580 Sports Talk and head out to me at the Butel Center for the Lewis Toyota High School Basketball Games of the Week. You are, as always, invited and encouraged to participate in the program today. We have our YouTube stream live chat. We always love to see people weigh in on the live chat on the YouTube stream. You can also comment on the stream if you're watching it on Twitter. We see those as well. And you can hit us up on the text line. Text line is wide open, 785-272-9429. Curious as to how you would answer this question. Who's got the most to gain from a Super Bowl championship next Saturday in Las Vegas? The Chiefs and the 49ers. Chiefs, obviously, organizationally, if they win a third Super Bowl, they are stamped as not just a modern dynasty, but one of the great NFL dynasties. If they are able to win 3 championships in 5 years, to win 3 in a decade, they're already, I think, pretty well certified as the team of the 2020s. But they can take that even a step further if they're able to win a third Super Bowl in 4 tries, a third Lombardi trophy in 5 years. The 49ers, on the flip side, they need a ring to sort of certify the run they've been on. They've been to 4 of the last 5 NFC championship games. It's been an impressive streak for Kyle Shanahan's bunch, but they don't have the Lombardi to show for it. It's been 29 years since the 49ers, a proud franchise with tremendous history, 5 Super Bowl championships as a franchise, have not hoisted the Lombardi trophy in 29 years. It would obviously mean a great deal to that fan base, and it would mean a lot to this particular collection of 49er players to put that final stamp on all of the winning that they have done in the last half decade. So I'm going to put the question to you guys, and I'll start by asking you first, Brendan. Who gains the most legacy-wise with a Super Bowl championship next Sunday?
I think the answer, honestly, is pretty easily Kyle Shanahan in this situation. And frankly, I don't think anyone else is even in the running, to be honest with you. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, he's 2-2 in Super Bowls and 4 appearances. Yeah, the more important part is he's won 2 and he's been to 4. Like that. I mean, there's a little bit maybe for Mahomes to gain there. For Andy Reid, we talked about earlier in the week, if he wants to be in the conversation for truly being the greatest of all time, another Super Bowl obviously would help in that regard. And I guess the Mahomes thing too, the ranks among the other all-time greats, but he's already among those ranks. There's really no debate about that at this point. You look at the 49ers, though, because I think for the Chiefs, most of these guys are made men. And yeah, I think you can make the argument for guys who are trying to, show out in the biggest game of the year to maybe improve their future situation. But for the most part, most of the core guys of this Chiefs team, including the coaches, are made men at this point, Spags included, who, by the way, he's not getting into the Pro Football Hall of Fame because coordinators just don't get there. And as we've been over before, his tenure as a head coach did not go very well. So he's going to walk right in, probably already, to the Chiefs Hall of Fame, and one more, and you can just probably build him his wall, his memorial right now. He's going to wander in with that. But you look at the 49ers team, and I think there are a lot more, something to gain versus something to lose narratives with that team. And honestly, I don't even think Brock Purdy is at the top of the list, because win or lose, it's just going to end up confirming priors that people already have. It's either going to say, oh, well, I knew he was great from the beginning, or it's going to be, oh, I knew he couldn't win in the first place. I don't really know how much there is to gain one way or the other, because he's the kind of player, and we saw this in his college career, his entire college career. We've already seen it now in about a year and a half as a full-time starter for the 49ers. And people just kind of think about him what they think about him. I think you could argue for Christian McCaffrey and the fact that he has become the only running back at this point in NFL history. You can say, no, he's probably worth the money. Like the draft picks you gave up to get him, the money you're paying him. Yeah, no, he's worth it because he's that guy. And it would sort of be a feather in the cap of the running back collective that guy was the best offensive player that won a Super Bowl. But it's Shanahan, man. He's been so many times near the top of the mountain only to lose his footing and fall all the way back down. We all know about Super Bowl 52. We know about 28-3. And while everybody was at fault there, Matt Ryan could have been a little bit better. Dan Quinn's defense certainly could have been a whole lot better. But Kyle Shanahan completely botched the end of that game with his play calling. And it's the most famous comeback in probably the history of all of American sports. We remember being up by 10 points, double digits in the second half of Super Bowl 54 against these very Kansas City Chiefs with much of the same core still intact in that game, and just completely yakking that one away. They lost by double digits after being up by 10 in the second half. That's the kind of game that was. That right now is the legacy of Kyle Shanahan. So if he wins, then he has gotten there. Finally, that is all those years of hard work culminating with winning the big one. And if not, then all the talk about how he's such an infallible coach, an infallible offensive genius, and this whiz kid mastermind, all of a sudden, I think even the most ardent Shanahan supporters are going to start losing a little bit of faith. Even if it's about the defense, you say, okay, well, yeah, he calls the offense, not the defense. But his whole shtick is that he learned on the defensive side of the defense. He was a quality control assistant way back in the day for John Gruden. He learned defense when he was there. That was sort of the thing that helped him get to where he is now, this marrying of knowing defensive schemes versus what you want to run offensively. And by the way, even if it's the defense's fault, you hired Steve Wilkes, man. That hire is on you. So I think certainly the most to gain in terms of legacy and the most to lose, because I think even, again, the most ardent Kyle Shanahan stans are going to say, dang, he really can't win the big one if he ends up coming up short again 3 times in 3 tries.
This would be it is the 4th time in 5 years, as I mentioned, that Shanahan's team has been to a conference championship game. They lost back-to-back conference title games the last 2 years before breaking through to their second Super Bowl. It is a remarkable 5-year run. The only blip on the radar in 2020 when they had the quarterback injuries, Nick Mullins ended up their leading passer that year. And not coincidentally, they finished 21st in total scoring and 15th in total offense, and were 6-10. So, when they have had a largely healthy starting quarterback and at least been able to execute the plan as initially designed by Kyle Shanahan, their ceiling or their floor has been a conference championship game appearance. That's impressive no matter how you slice it. But you got to break through and win one of these. Otherwise, you're the 90s Bills. And you can't. You don't want to be remembered as this version of the 90s Bills too. I guess that would make the Chiefs the Cowboys. So I think there's a lot on the line for Shanahan for sure, Spencer.
I think I talked about it yesterday. I think when I said the legacy for Kyle Shanahan to his dad, and along that nature, as he will no longer live in the shadows of his dad and being able to win a Super Bowl. Back where didn't his dad win his first Super Bowl in San Francisco?
As an offensive coordinator, yes. Yeah.
So, he won his first Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator there. So, obviously, that's something he wants to do. And I think for the Chiefs, the what's on the line, I think Drew Tranquill, he spoke yesterday about joining the Chiefs and being from the other side, being on the Chargers before. I think to him, it's not only a contract year for him, as he bet on himself with that 1-year deal. He performed so far this season. I think for him that could add to a contract for the Chiefs' sake. They hope it's not. What am I trying to say here? Excuse me. They hope that they're able to get him back on a hometown discount next year. But for himself, he bet on himself this year. If he's able to win a Super Bowl and play well that he has this season, that could mean a payday for him. And then I want to mention one other thing, Kittle. I think that could, if he's able to win a Super Bowl, that could solidify his Hall of Fame career. So he's one of the best tight ends to ever play, but he doesn't have a ring. So if he's able to get a ring, that would make him, I think, a Hall of Fame first ballot.
I think Kittle's probably already on a Hall of Fame track as a tight end with 3,000-yard seasons, 4 All-Pros, 2 first-team All-Pros, 5 Pro Bowls. But certainly you get a ring, you're certified. You make an interesting point about defensive players for the Chiefs that are on the last years of their contracts. And Drew Tranquill was obviously brought to Kansas City on a 1-year deal. We obviously know about the Chris Jones contract saga that was such a huge story this offseason. Wasn't even resolved until the season had already started. L'Jarius Sneed is on the final year of his deal and stands to make a lot of money. Mike Dana, as we've talked about, stands to maybe make some money, maybe use the Super Bowl as a launching pad into free agency. It always happens in the league where guys who play on the Super Bowl champions tend to get a bit of a bump in free agency because you want to bring, guys in who are from a winning culture or contributed to winning. And so it boosts the value of those guys as they hit free agency. So a lot to play for in that regard. I think the Chiefs' legacy that's the most interesting might be Chris Jones. I think he's already a deadbolt lock for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I thought that going into this year that he was maybe not a deadbolt lock going into this year, but now given another double-digit sack season, another first-team All-Pro. He's now been an All-Pro 5 times and twice a first-team All-Pro. If he gets a third ring and he's the best defensive player from this Chiefs dynasty, the defining Chiefs defender on this team, I think at that point he becomes a deadbolt lock for Canton.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly helps his argument. There's no denying that. I'm just going through his stats, and I guess I sort of glossed over the fact that he was a second-team All-Pro twice. So he was one of the 4 best players at his position in the NFL.
3 times.
For now, what would that be? Sorry. Second-team All-Pro 3 times, including 2 years in a row, and then the 2 first-team All-Pro selections over the last 2 years. So that's 5 of the last 6 years he has been voted as one of the 4 best players at his position. Yeah, I mean, there's a stronger argument than I guess I gave it credit for. He's been healthy for the most part these last couple of years. In fact, he's played every game he's been healthy for over the last 2 seasons, which, if you remember, that was a knock on him for a few years there that he wasn't able to stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that I would say 100% shoe in at this point. I think, what's the magic number for sacks? I don't know that he can get to 100. He needs 24 and a half more. Although you throw in postseason as well. Did he end up finally getting a postseason sack last year?
Yes, he did.
I don't remember. I know that was a whole big thing.
Yeah, he did. That was a huge narrative that he didn't have a postseason sack, and then he got one in the AFC Championship game.
That's right. I actually got credit for 2. So, yeah, you add in his postseason sacks, 2.5 of them. He's got 78 total career sacks, regular and post. I think it's certainly possible he could get darn near 100. So maybe you're right. And, we don't often judge non-quarterbacks in that same kind of way with rings, but it certainly doesn't hurt. And, maybe there's a better case for Chris Jones than I was giving him credit for.
So there are only 43 guys in the history of the game that officially have 100 sacks, because sacks, of course, were not kept as an official stat prior to 1982, which is a wild thing to consider. If you go back and you tally up the things that were considered sacks prior to 1982, the number grows. There are 64 players who have 100 career sacks. 100 is not like a deadbolt lock. You know who's got 100 sacks? Carlos Dunlap. He's not going to the Hall of Fame. Cameron Wake is not going to the Hall of Fame. Robert Quinn is probably not going to the Hall of Fame. Neil Smith is probably not going to the NFL Hall of Fame. But, the further up the list you get, the more and more that you find, like, the top 17 guys in sacks all time, the only ones who aren't in the Hall of Fame just haven't been under consideration long enough. Like Terrell Suggs with his 139 sacks is going to get in. Julius Peppers, 159.5 is going to get in. Leslie O'Neal isn't in, which is weird. 132.5 sacks, another former Chief. A lot of former Chiefs in the top 17 all time who are in the Hall of Fame or probably will eventually get there. But obviously, positional differences for Jones as an interior pass rusher relative to guys who are coming off the edge or were lining up at defensive end all those years. So I think he's got 1 or 2 more like healthy, productive years in him as he gets into his 30s. If he gets over 100 sacks and he's got the 2 rings and he's got the All-Pros, if he had that 3rd ring, I think, because out of this, dynasties tend to produce Hall of Famers. So you look at the defensive side of the football for the Chiefs, who are the guys who are going to get in? I think you start with Chris Jones. I really do.
Probably, yeah. I'm glad you didn't bring this up and change my mind, because I would not be changing your mind on this one. I have been swayed. I have been thoroughly swayed at this point. I think that's fair to say.
So it's an interesting argument for him. Like we brought up Reed earlier this week, Andy Reid, that a 3rd Super Bowl would put him firmly in the conversation the very short list of the greatest NFL coaches of all time. Patrick Mahomes doesn't need the win. Like, I don't think a loss hurts his legacy, but it wouldn't hurt certainly to join the 3 rings club. There's only 4 of the guys in that group: Brady, Bradshaw, Montana, and Aikman. If he joins that group, that's the next step in Mahomes building his greatest of all time case. What about Joe Thuney? Joe Thuney hasn't been an All-Pro as often as I thought. This was his first team All-Pro nod this year. 3rd time he's been an All-Pro. He was 2nd team each of the last 2 seasons. But he's already got 3 Super Bowl rings. What if he gets a 4th? Is he one of the rare guards that maybe gets some Canton consideration down the road if he can add another ring to his resume?
So your list, I got to pull them up here. Your list of Hall of Fame guards. There certainly aren't many of them in the modern era of professional football.
I think there are 17. I went to the Hall of Fame webpage to look, and there are 17 players who are solely defined as guards. That doesn't include, players who played guard and tackle, or guard and center, or guard and another position, like the two-way players of the early days of the NFL. But full-time guards, there are only 17 of them in Canton.
So, you're looking at guys like Bruce Matthews, Randall McDaniel, John Hanna, Larry Allen, Steve Hutchinson, Jerry Kramer, Will Shields. There you go, another former Chief. Like, we're talking about the greatest to ever play this position. And I'm looking at Pro Football Reference right now on their Hall of Fame monitor listings. They've got this metric that determines how likely you are to make the Hall of Fame based on certain things. Joe Thuney, for what it is worth, currently clocks in on the Hall of Fame monitor nowhere even close to the average Hall of Famer. The average Hall of Famer comes in with a ranking of 106. There's not a maximum on this number. Joe Thuney slots in right now, and this is with his All-Pro included, at 44.5. He's like behind Quentin Nelson even on this ranking, and he's behind David DeCastro, who good player for a long time. I think Joe Thuney is a better player than David DeCastro. And I know this isn't the be all and end all of figuring out if these guys make it in. There are lots of good players at lots of positions that haven't gotten into the Hall of Fame. It's just so hard for linemen if you don't have the accolades. Like, that is the number one thing. I'll pull one up here. Mike Munchak, for example. He was just a 2-time first-team All-Pro. He was also a second-team All-Pro 6 times, I believe. Yeah, a 6-time second-team All-Pro, 2-time first-team All-Pro, 9 Pro Bowls, all-decade kind of team. If Thuney can last long enough, Dan, to get on the 2020s all-decade team, he's going to get in, because I believe every player who has been on one is in the Hall of Fame. So I think longevity and maybe a couple more first or second teams might help. I don't know if rings make a difference for linemen. I'm not really sure, and I guess we could dive in and do the research here. I don't know if that would really influence it for him, though.
I just looked up the Hall of Fame by positions, and they have OL listed as one position, but within, if they played one, it lists their positions as well. Only 8 guard-only players are in the Hall of Fame. There are tackle guards, tackle center, or tackle guard centers. Like Bruce Matthews, they list him as a guard, tackle, and center.
Okay. See, yeah, I think he's only in there as a guard on the Hall of Fame's official website. So
I'm on the Hall of Fame official website by position.
I was too, and it told me there were 17. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of that.
I mean, there's 17 people listed that have guard total in their list, but there's only 8 that have G just next to them.
Here's one other way to break this down. And some of these, again, we're clearly trying to figure out exactly what makes someone a guard versus just an interior lineman or whatever else. There is only one Hall of Fame guard, according to Pro Football Reference, that has fewer than 2 first-team All-Pros. That is Tom Mack, who I know you guys are both big fans of, who played for the Rams in the 60s into the late 70s. He's the only one. He was never first-team All-Pro. Everyone else has at least 2, and only 2 have 2. That's Will Shields and Mike Munchak. Everybody else has 3 or more. So I would think there's still a ways to go for Joe Thuney. But if he stays healthy and has a few more productive years, it's certainly not out of the question.
I looked at Chris Jones just out of curiosity on the Hall of Fame monitor for defensive tackles, and they don't have him close to the average either. But the guys who are up on the average, they kind of break the curve. Like Bob Lilly and Aaron Donald and Randy White and Alan Page and Mean Joe Green and John Randall and those 6 in particular, Warren Sapp too, just totally smashed the curve for basically everybody else who's ever played the position. But Chris Jones right now, his comparables in terms of that are guys like Trevor Price, Ted Washington, Jerome Brown, Dana Stubblefield, like really, really good players, but obviously no Hall of Famers in there. If he wins another ring, he jumps those guys, and then he lives in the same conversation as Steve McMichael, who I think is a borderline guy, Vince Wilfork, who I think might get in eventually. And so you start to have a little bit of a different conversation at that point around Chris Jones. So just, this is not like an official number. This is something somebody cooked up, but it's a formula that suggests that another ring would indeed put Chris Jones's Hall of Fame credentials on firmer footing. Anyway, a fun way to think about it and a different way to look at Super Bowl 58 between the Chiefs and the 49ers. We're going to hear from a future Hall of Famer, Travis Kelce, a little bit later this hour. He spoke with the media earlier today at One Arrowhead Drive. But first, after this first break, we're going to play a game of Change My Mind as we get things rolling on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. .34 on 580 Sports Talk. Before we get to Change My Mind, we have to acknowledge the sad news of the passing of the great Carl Weathers today. We've seen it brought up in the YouTube live chat if you are hearing this for the first time. Carl Weathers, former Raider, so this is a sports story, former member of the Oakland Raiders, and of course known mostly as Apollo Creed, but also as Chubbs Peterson, and also just recently in those ads with Rob Gronkowski for his Kick of Destiny sequel for FanDuel coming up in the Super Bowl. Carl Weathers passed away today at the age of 76. And all I have to say about that is screw you guys. I'm playing for Chubbs.
I watched that movie, I swear, like every 3 weeks. It is always on either TBS or it is on Paramount Network or something. I have seen it so many times. It's probably the movie I've seen more than any other movie, I think. Even Anchorman, I think I've seen it more, which is really saying something.
It jumps up on you, like it sneaks up on you how quotable that movie is, especially when you get out on the golf course. I believe that's Mr. Gilmore's.
Yeah.
Grizzly Adams did have a beard.
You bleep and play it as it lies. Great film. And yeah, Chubbs was great.
It is a great film.
Great character.
Let's We don't quite have enough time to talk about Julie Bowen in that movie, but Julie Bowen also in that movie.
Julie Bowen is
shout out to
in
Virginia.
That movie.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Julie Bowen in that movie. Absolutely.
First time I saw that movie changed my life, I think.
A formative experience, I think, for many of us. Anyhow, let's get into Change My Mind. We'll start with Spencer. Spencer, you got to change my mind today. We'll start with you.
Change my mind. The NFL should go back to a regular Pro Bowl game. These Pro Bowl games, I think they should do that and then do along with the skills competition. Because I remember like back in 2005-06, right when NFL Network launched, they would like throw them on there and then they throw them on there like during the summer from the old ones. So I think they need to go back to the regular game format and try to make it fun somehow. I mean, they already tried it, but I also think they need to keep those skills competitions as well.
I don't like the Pro Bowl game. It's one of those things that sounds better in theory than it does in execution. There's no way to play a real all-star football game. Those guys are already risking their bodies and putting themselves at risk of long-term injury for their teams. We'd be apoplectic if a star player ruptured an Achilles tendon in a Pro Bowl or tore their ACL in a Pro Bowl. You know how I know? Remember Robert Edwards? Running back for the New England Patriots. They used to have a thing that they did around Pro Bowl weekend. They had the rookies play beach football, and Robert Edwards was playing beach football after a 1,000-yard rookie season, and he injured his foot so gruesomely, I think he almost lost the foot. He was never the same player after that. So
I just remember Sean Taylor's hit on the punter, and like
Brian Moore.
That was legit. Like that was like that was when the Pro Bowl was still like fun. It was like the year or two after that, it started to really decline.
But we only remember that because he was the one guy playing football in the Pro Bowl. Like nobody else was, and that's why it stood out so much. Because he was the one guy actually playing football. I do like what I wish they would bring back. Remember the old NFL quarterback club like video game where you had all of the challenges?
Oh yeah.
You had the like the scramble, like the agility challenge. Then you hit the targets as they were stationary, and then as they moved, and then you had the longest throw. Like they should bring back the quarterback club
stuff.
I thought
they did that.
Maybe they do, but like
I just don't even pay attention.
I don't
want
to watch Gardner Minshew do it. I want to watch the good quarterbacks do it. So
I wish there was just more incentive,
and players just don't have a desire to do it anymore.
Something to make it like it used to be, because I liked watching it growing up. And then like it just like 2009-10, it kind of just went away. I felt like in popularity.
All right.
Like many things in life, it was always better when you were 10 years old.
Yeah,
that's true.
Everything was better when you were 10 years old. All right. Brendan, what's your change my mind today?
Mine is in honor of the recently deceased Carl Weathers. Rocky is the best sports movie.
Ooh. It's not my favorite sports movie. We'll start there. But as far as just like film, like cinema, is it the best sports movie? That is fascinating to think about. It did win Best Picture. I think it's the only sports movie to win the Oscar for Best Picture. So,
Raging Bull, I believe, is the other.
Oh yeah, Raging Bull. Forgot about that one. There was another boxing film that was on the tip of my tongue. Did Cinderella Man win Best Picture? I think it got nominated.
No, but did $1 Million Baby win? That's technically
I think that one did.
Sports movie.
I didn't think $1 Million Baby was that good.
Wow, if you guys want to get into filmmaking and win some awards, make a boxing movie. Apparently,
yes. Boxing films are the ones like there's like On the Waterfront. I think is technically a boxing movie too, and I think that one might have won some awards.
I could have been a contender.
That's the one. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that one Best Picture too. So I don't know if that's really considered a sports movie, but I know Marlon Brando plays a washed-up boxer in On the Waterfront. Anyway, I was wrong. Raging Bull did not win Best Picture. I was wrong. How about that? That's been 580 Film Talk. Yeah, I think it's probably the best, like, the version, like all sports movies at their heart, there's something in there about the underdog trying to rise up. And that's like Rocky subverts it a little bit. Spoiler alert, Rocky doesn't win. I don't know if you've seen Rocky, Spencer, you're pretty young. Rocky doesn't win.
I've seen Rocky.
Okay, good. I'm just making sure. Spoiler.
Like that's an insult to think that I'm a sports guy and I've never seen the Rocky movie.
It took me a while to see the Rocky movies. I didn't see them until I was in my 20s. want anything. I was like 13 and I wanted to watch Rocky. I saw Rocky 4 before I saw the other ones.
I will tell you, during COVID, I did watch a lot of I've seen the first Rocky like years and years ago, but during COVID, I did sit down and watch all the Rocky movies because I had nothing else to do.
NFL Championship Sunday 2016. The year the Broncos and the Panthers both won, and I was bitter about the Seahawks getting mowed down by the Panthers the week before. AMC was running the Rocky movies as a marathon, and I watched them all in one sitting instead of watching any of the championship games that day. I was a bad sports guy that day. No, I don't think I can change your mind. I think Rocky is, in terms of cinema, I think it is the best sports movie. Certainly the one that holds up the best. I think that's one that's still rewatchable to this day and stands up really, really well. Can't change your mind on that one, Brendan.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms, and I think it's just a great movie, great sports film in general, but in terms of the actual cinematic quality, I think it's number one with a bullet. There's a few, like, Remember the Titans, I think, is rewatchable. There are parts of that don't hold up quite as well these days, but it's still a good movie. But Rocky is like cinematic masterpiece kind of film. So I think it's got to be number one.
Speaking of Hollywood, Travis Kelce spoke to the media today. He's been in TV shows and hosted Saturday Night Live. He's kind of Hollywood.
He's hosted his own TV show.
Yeah, he was on his own TV show. We can't forget about that. And did you ever watch Catching Kelce?
I haven't, but I've seen all the social media stuff that's popped up.
I remember when it came out, I watched the first episode. It was extremely cringe, as the kids say now. I don't think we were saying it then, but we say it now.
They were talking about it on an episode of New Heights recently, and they're just talking about, I think it was when, I guess, the one where Jason had his wife on, and I guess they were talking about sitting there, like watching it from the stands, because I think it was at the Coliseum.
Yeah, they did some of the stuff at the Los Angeles Coliseum. Yeah,
so they were just sitting in the stands watching it.
Yeah, it was not good. It was one of the lower versions of the dating show format. Travis has done well for himself since. He's going to play in his 4th Super Bowl next Sunday. He talked about it today. We'll hear from him next on 580 Sports Talk. Welcome back, 580 Sports Talk. Lots of audio from One Arrowhead Drive from earlier today. Travis Kelce, one of the persons who spoke to the media today, had quite a bit to say. So let's hear from the Chiefs' future Hall of Fame tight end.
Just what's the beginning of this ride like for you?
This year has been a wild year, man, and it's fun just getting the game plan ready and trying to clean everything up before we go down to the madness over there in Nevada, man.
Jason kind of got you about your beard.
I've been growing the beard out for years, man. No, I just started this probably at the end of the season. We started playing our best ball and just rode it on through the playoffs, man.
Travis, you were particularly pumped up last week. Why? What was it about that?
I think it's what we saw on film from their defense. Just guys flying around, playing to the whistle, and kind of trying to impose their will on guys. And we knew that we had to meet that mentality with that kind of mentality ourselves.
You feel like guys look to you for that kind of stuff, for energy, not just on game day, but during the week as well?
I think during the energy, I can help kind of channel that mindset, that mind frame, that desire, that focus to kind of lean on the guy next to you and play a little bit harder for the guy next to you, knowing what we're going up against for sure.
What's the difficulty maybe in repeating that this week?
Knowing that it's on film and that the team that we're going to play has seen that we can bring that mentality. So the challenge is there. This is a group that it's going to be the best defense we play up to this year, and I'm excited about that challenge, man.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
Andy's well known for advocating you guys show your personalities, but also we've got a limit. I wonder what that's been like for you to navigate Andy's line and how much he's let you be who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on paper saying that I'm very fortunate I've been here with Coach Reed because he's helped me learn while showing my personality, my passion, my energy for the game, all while trying to, channel that professionalism to not hurt the team. Without a doubt, I've been fortunate, and I think Coach Reed does it better than anybody.
Drew Tranquil was saying yesterday that during some of Andy's talks the other day that you would just kind of jump in and yell, and Andy was kind of like, yeah, let's go. Is that part of what it means to feel free to be who you are?
I don't think I was cutting him off. I think I was just maybe beating him to the punch, getting everybody fired up. I was just excited and trying to channel that energy and make sure everybody heard me, man.
He's in the Super Bowl thing a few times now. From year to year, how are you anticipating Monday night for free for all to be maybe a little bit?
It's exciting, man. It's all exciting stuff. It kind of builds and sets the tone for the whole week. It's the biggest stage in the world, man, and that Monday night, that's going to be kind of where it starts for everybody. And at this point, man, I just love it, man. It's an exciting time. It's a once-in-a-lifetime type of thing that I've been able to enjoy a few times, man. So,
what's your appreciation level of that? I mean, you went to the playoffs all those times and didn't make it, and how hard it is to get back. You can't take it for granted, can you?
No, there's nothing you can take for granted in this league. Even being in these offices every single day, you got to find appreciation in that. And I've been beyond fortunate to land here in Kansas City and be surrounded by the men and women that are in this building. It's just it makes you want to play that much harder and appreciate it that much more when you get these kind of opportunities.
Talk about getting support, not only from the guys, but obviously sharing that. But for you in Baltimore on Sunday, just what did it mean after the game to be on the field with your parents, to have your brother there, obviously have an interaction with Taylor? Just what does it mean to get that moment?
It's another memory in the journey that we get to cherish, man. And I'm fortunate that I got all the support I need off the field. And it gives me a reason to play that much harder on the field as the people you just mentioned. So,
Travis, Andy and Pat talked about how you needed that rest week 18 a little bit, and obviously you started the season with the knee injury. Has this been more of a grind for you physically than other years in your career, just because of that early injury?
I mean, every single year is different, and I'm not going to lie. There have been years where I've kind of battled through some things that, frankly, were a little bit more serious and a little bit more frustrating than what I had to go through this year. But this year, I think the fact that we weren't winning kind of piled up on how I was feeling physically, and you can just catch yourself in a I don't know, just like a darker room, I guess, if that makes sense. And being able to find some ways to win, kind of rally with the group. Find a way to win the division still, find a way to get into the playoffs and get to where we are today, man. It just makes it that much more fun. But every year has its own challenges, man. And everybody's dealing with something, man. I promise you.
Travis, also around Christmas time, you guys did have probably the low point of the season. What can you
Coach Reed just challenging every single person in this building to up the ante just one more step and just keep taking it up a notch every week from here on out. And that's why we love the big guy. You know, you never fall astray from that kind of mentality, no matter how many losses you have, no matter how close the games are and you're just not finishing them. Coach Reed does a great job of rechanneling that mindset every single week and presenting a challenge against the defense or the offense or just the team that we're going against in the near future. And I mean, this week, no better time than to challenge everybody in that building. He's got everybody fired up. I mean, when you look back on it, it was definitely a time of like now or never. Like let's refocus. Let's get this thing going. But at the same time, you know, yeah, I guess every journey is different, man. Every journey is different. So it's definitely appreciated that we had to go through that. But it don't mean nothing if you don't come out of this last game with a victory.
What examples do you have of how your games evolved to accommodate, you know, playing 10, 11 years? That's usually when NFL players seem to drop off.
Well, I'd say football has changed a lot, you know, especially the tight end room. I think when I first got here, the majority of my reps were with my hand in the ground. And it's kind of slowly changed to where it's either 50-50 or I'm in a 2-point stance. And that's run game, pass game, and just the RPOs, the ability to have the quick throws on run plays, you know, and having that option, putting all that on the quarterback. The offenses have just changed a lot. And on top of that, you know, the coaching staff in here has done a great job of putting me in positions to succeed. And with that, you know, it's just on me to make sure I'm putting in the work and I'm ready for everything.
Have you had more, I guess, in front of the camera experience than anybody else on your team? Just wondered where that comes, the confidence that you have in those situations, where that comes from.
My mom's home videos, man. Just having that camera on me at all times, seeing what silly stuff I'm going to do next, man. I've always been comfortable in the rooms that I've been in, and just been fortunate that I don't know, I've been able to kind of look into a camera with ease, I guess. I don't know. It's just having fun out there, I guess.
Being an athlete, does that
I think just having confidence in general and sports for me were where I built my confidence. I was, probably won't believe me, but I was a shy kid growing up until like I got onto the sports field or the court or the ice rink. And then I kind of let my personality show a little bit more because I was having fun. I was having success. And that just kind of propelled me to have confidence in life.
You put your arm around Kadarius after that game in New England. What did you tell him in that moment? And then what are you telling him in the facility this week as he prepares for the Super Bowl?
Man, I just want him to know it's always love in this building, you know. And I know guys go through things both in this building and in their personal lives. He just had a beautiful baby girl. So shout out to Kadarius for that one. But I think you know, what's real is what happens in this building and how we can channel that. And I just wanted to make sure he knew that we were all still behind him and ready to go get the Super Bowl, man.
That's some of what Travis Kelce had to say today on his press conference. And a note there about Tony that kind of dovetails with some of the things we were talking about yesterday, Spencer. The idea of there's still trust in that building. There's still support in that building that no matter what guys are going through, what guys have been through, what struggles guys have had, there's still a widespread belief that if their number is called, they can go out and they can deliver. Yeah. And we talked about that in relation to MVS, and it sounds like there's still that internal support for Kadarius Toney as well. And I think that's part of championship culture.
Yeah, and I think during the presser to the special teams coach, Dave Tobe, not Traub, excuse me. Tobe talked about him potentially being a punt returner if he is active in the Super Bowl.
Well, he did have the longest punt return in Super Bowl history last year. And I know Chiefs fans, for all the grief they've given Tony throughout the year and all as well-deserved as all has been, I don't think anybody would mind an encore performance if indeed Kadarius Toney's number was called on Super Bowl Sunday. That's going to wrap up this first hour of 580 Sports Talk. Coming up in the 3 o'clock hour, we're going to get a shootout or a slugfest in Super Bowl 58. We'll talk about which outcome is more likely. We'll also play on Second Thought and be joined by our Chiefs insider, Matt Derrick. That's coming up on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. 580 Sports Talk, hour number 2 on this Friday. I got to confess, I had a bit planned. I was going to do like the exact same introduction that I did hour number 1, like same inflection, same everything. I was going to make people think it was the first hour all over again in honor of Groundhog Day and all. But I scrapped it. Like, sometimes you think you've got a good gag, and then you're like, you know what? Nah, this one's a loser. Bang it. Get it out of here.
Very reminiscent, Dan, of however many months ago it was. God, it's probably closer to a year now when I tried to mix up the way I introed the show, because I do the same thing every hour. I don't even remember what I said, but God, sometimes it doesn't work.
It was really bad. We like rebooted the hour and everything.
I was like, yo, what's going on? No, trash. Ball that one up, throw it in the dumpster.
What's happening? I don't even remember what it was. It was really bad. I wish I remembered what it was, but oh my God, that was an all-time moment in 580 Sports Talk history. That's Brendan Wierzinski. He is in the worst Eastern hotel in are you in Tahlequah? Did you make it all the way there?
I did. Thankfully, it's not too long of a drive from Claremore, so I got in before midnight last night, and I'll tell you what, I was exhausted. The men's game yesterday for Washburn, it went to overtime. It was a doozy. We had some raucous fans who were right behind us, so it was a blast, but I got in, I laid on the bed and thought, okay, I am not going to make it very long tonight.
So, obviously, Brendan is with the Washburn Ichabod basketball team. They were playing in Claremore, Oklahoma against Rogers State last night. Tough loss for the women. Men, a thrilling win in overtime, so a split for the Bods. And then tomorrow afternoon, they are in action against Northeastern State in Tahlequah. What are your first impressions of Tahlequah? Because as we all know, this was Jake LeBon's favorite road city in the MIAA. Effusive in his praise for all things Tahlequah, our old pal Jake. What are your first impressions?
Okay, so first things first, I need to mention Claremore yesterday. Okay, I had never been to Claremore before. I technically have called a game between Washburn and Northeastern State before, but it was during COVID, which meant they didn't want us traveling for that game. It was a long enough trip. They're like, if you can avoid traveling, avoid it. So I actually called the game via the MIAA network feed from Washburn SID Gene Castle's office at Washburn University. So this will be my first time actually here, but I have called the Northeastern game before. So it was Claremore yesterday. I always thought Jake was just being a jerk to the people of Claremore when he called their gym the 4-H building. I thought he was just doing a bit. No, it literally is a 4-H building. Like they've got the big stock building and like the rodeo grounds and all that. Yeah, I had to text him. I was like, all right, I was wrong. Like you were 100% right about the Expo Center. It literally is the 4-H building for Claremore. Tahlequah, they had an incredible spread, by the way. They had country fried steak as the medium meal. Unbelievable. It was delicious.
Wow.
It might have been fresh.
Oh, I bet it was. Oh, so good.
Building, it might have been fresh. That might have been right off the rack.
So good. So Tahlequah, I mean, I didn't know anything about it except Jake had not had positive things to say. And it's really dark getting into town. There's really not a whole lot between Claremore and Tahlequah, but I did see two things when I drove into town that gives it an A+ for me. You will see, and I've got the bag right here. I don't know if you can see it on the YouTube camera. You can see the Whataburger logo. Like a block apart from each other, Whataburger and Brahms. So it's good for me. Yeah. All good for me.
That's all you need.
One was lunch and one's about to be dinner coming up in a few hours.
See, I had Whataburger on the way out here. Right, actually, I think we talked about this the first day on the air. The one that Patrick Mahomes
one of
invested
the
in.
Mahomes Whataburgers.
Yeah. Was not impressed. Was not at all impressed.
Some people, I think, big it up to the point where, if something is built up so big, it's an inevitable letdown. But maybe you just need to have the patty melt next time.
I guess. I mean,
oh, it's so good.
And the spicy ketchup with your fries.
I was impressed by Culver's. So
yeah, Culver's is solid. You've got to do Brahms.
That's a win.
You got to do Brahms at some point.
I will tell you, I've had Culver's 3 or 4 times since I've been here.
Hell yeah, we got to convert. You had the cheese curds yet? It's the big question.
I have not.
You got to do the curds.
Gotta get them. Gotta get them.
So Brendan Wierzinski is with us remotely. I am Dan Lucero. Spencer Dupuis is across the glass. It is the full power trio with you today on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. We appreciate you being with us. Thanks to everybody hanging out in the YouTube live chat. The text line is open if you'd like to interact with us in that fashion. 785-272 9429. We'd love to get your take on our big question of this hour regarding the nature of Super Bowl 58. What kind of game are we going to get between the 49ers and the Chiefs? We'll talk about that. We've also got some On Second Thought coming up this hour, and Matt Derrick, our Chiefs insider, will join us at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk to Matt from Chiefs Digest. Also, Mitch Schultz, voice to the Chiefs. We missed him yet. The lowest of the 4 Patrick Mahomes Super Bowls to date. The first time the Chiefs played in the Super Bowl against the 49ers with Mahomes at quarterback, the total was 53.5. That game went under, 31-20 final score. The Super Bowl 55 over-under, Chiefs Buccaneers, was 56.5. That one was obviously well under, with Tampa Bay winning 31-9. Last year's Chiefs Eagles total for Super Bowl 57 was 51.5, and that game soared over with the 38-35 final. So the expectation is that this will be a lower scoring game than was expected of the first 3 Mahomes/Chiefs Super Bowls. And I think that is a product of just how well this Chiefs defense has played. I don't know if you guys saw this stat earlier. The Chiefs defense over the first 3 games of these playoffs have allowed just over 13 points per game. It's the 3rd lowest total by a defense in a 3-game run in the postseason ever. The only ones lower, the legendary 2000 Baltimore Ravens, who allowed 5 points per game in the playoffs.
Wow.
Also, the 02 Buccaneers allowed about 13 points a game. The 4th highest is the Legion of Boom 2013 Seahawks. So that's the company that this Chiefs defense is keeping, and that's what they've done to opposing offenses so far in the postseason. With that in mind, I am tending to lean toward thinking this will be a lower scoring game. I don't know how I feel about the total of 47.5. I'm not telling you to go out and bet it one way or another right now, but my gut tells me we're not getting 38-35 again at the bare minimum. Brendan, what's your read on how you think this game unfolds?
I've gone back and forth on this because I was thinking about this question last night. That's how I spent my trip from Claremore to Tahlequah. I was thinking about this question, and I feel like you can certainly make an argument going both ways. And the easier one, I think, to make is that it's going to be a lower scoring battle because the Chiefs have played in a lot of lower scoring games over the course of this season, between their defense being elite, maybe the very best in the NFL, and between the offense having very well documented issues. San Francisco's got a good defense. I think that's a pretty easy argument to make. Here's the other one, and I made a comment about this tweet, and I couldn't find it the other day, but I just found it digging through my bookmarks. It says, quote, "Defense wins championships." Says the people that just watched an elite defense give up 21 points in 5 minutes and 19 seconds. That was from Super Bowl 54 when these two teams last played. And that's, I know the smart money and the conventional wisdom is on the defenses, but I just have a hunch that this is going to be a game where we are going to see a lot of points, relatively speaking, and maybe just relative to the Vegas total, a lot of points on the board, because you do have elite playmakers on both sides of the ball. The Chiefs have the best quarterback, maybe the best overall player in the league. They've got an elite tight end, and Rashee Rice, while he might not be an elite quote-unquote wide receiver right now, he is a primary weapon, like in the sense that every team, in theory, has a guy you could consider a primary weapon. I think you could argue the 49ers have 4 of those guys, in Debo, in Ayuk, in Kittle, in McCaffrey. I think they've got 4 of those. I think Rashee Rice is that kind of guy. You might not say, to borrow a line here from Mitch Holthus, he might not be number 1 for your fantasy team, but he is that kind of weapon, and he's been playing unbelievable football over the last 2 months. I do think between the fact that you still have Mahomes and you've got a couple of those go-to guys on the Chiefs offense, the fact that the 49ers, I think, are going to be more willing to commit to the run than Baltimore was. I know I mentioned that earlier in the week. I do think it's true. I think there is a smaller chance, especially in the first 3 quarters, if they are competitive in the game, that the 49ers are going to abandon what they do well, that they would abandon the run. I don't think that Kyle Shanahan will get bored of that the way Todd Monken apparently did. And I do think that San Francisco will run to their strength as much as they can, try to open up some of that play action stuff for Brock Purdy where he can be so dangerous, try to force the Chiefs to get more aggressive where Purdy has also been pretty good so far. I almost did the thing that I wasn't going to. Where he has been pretty good so far.
Don't you do it. Don't you do it. Please resist the temptation.
So while I have a hunch, or while the smart money is certainly on lower scoring game, defensive struggle, there's just something about the way this game is shaping up and the pieces these two offenses have that make me think we're going to end up with a higher scoring game than some would believe.
I think I'm right there with you, Brendan, and I think it's just the elite players on offense that kind of give me that notion, and I think that you have elite offensive weapons. Although you have great defensive weapons, I just think offense will trump defense in this particular game.
So I think I'm of the mind of, we have a text in from the 785, and I think I'm following this texter's logic here. The text reads, I think this Super Bowl will be more of a grinded out game. Both teams with very good defenses and a good running game. This might look like old school football. I'm kind of that mind that this game might not have as many possessions as we're used to seeing, or at least not as many productive possessions as we've grown used to seeing in these Super Bowl games or these playoff games for the Chiefs. Looking at the games that the Chiefs have played in the playoffs so far, Chiefs-Dolphins. Chiefs had 10 possessions in that game. Dolphins had 11 possessions. One of them, the extra possession was the end of the game. In Bills-Chiefs, Bills only had the ball 8 times. Chiefs had the ball 9 times, and one of them was to kneel out the game. So only 8 possessions, essentially, per team. And when you really drill down on that, two of the Chiefs' possessions were kneel down end of half possessions. So really, they only had the ball 7 times with a chance to actually score. And in the AFC Championship game, there were more possessions because there were more punts. There were a lot of 3 and outs in this game, but still, you're talking about 11 possessions. I think this one looks a little bit more like the divisional round game this year, and maybe looks a little bit more like last year's Super Bowl, where there are fewer possessions. Fewer possessions would usually mean fewer opportunities to score. Now, last year for the Chiefs and Eagles, that wasn't the case. Chiefs touched the ball 8 times, and they scored 38 points. And offensively, they scored 31. Really, like they scored 31. They had the defensive touchdown, but 31 points on 8 possessions. That's still pretty remarkable, and could have had more if not for the missed field goal in the first quarter. I think it's a lower possession number because I do think both teams are going to look at the rushing defenses for the other team and feel like that's where they are the most exploitable. We've discussed the problems that the Chiefs have had defending the run, and that the 49ers are going to be more willing than the Ravens were. And I agree with you 100% on this point, Brendan, that the 49ers are not going to give their running backs only 6 carries. Something would have to happen that would be very drastic, very strange for that to be the case in Super Bowl 58. But I think the Chiefs might be of the same mind that they might want to hit the 49ers on the ground, that their interior rush defense has not been very good, and that the Chiefs are going to have an opportunity to grind out some drives as well. So I think it's like a low possession game. That doesn't necessarily mean low scoring game, but it tends to trend that way.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what trend, when you say a low possession game, it's probably going to be low scoring, but it'll probably be a close game, I think, no matter what. I think this matchup poises itself to be a very close game, to be a good game, whereas in the past, and even I wouldn't even talk about the past, I'm talking about people saying this isn't the Super Bowl matchup everybody wanted, it's still going to be a really good Super Bowl matchup.
I do think, though, and again, because the logic is sound, I am basing my stance here entirely on hunch and feel as opposed to actual logic here. But a game that pops into my mind that San Francisco has already played in this postseason, taking on Green Bay in the divisional round. Shocker, a Packer game just popped into my mind as an example of this. That game only had 7 total possessions and really only had 6 possessions in the first half because there was a 1-play kneel down by Green Bay at the end of the second quarter. So really, you only had 6 possessions in the first half. Then the game exploded. It was 7-6 at the break. Then after that, we had 32 points in the second half. Games sometimes can just get out of hand. Teams get a little bit desperate. Sometimes that leads to a bunch of points for them. Sometimes it can lead to a bunch of points for the other team. That's exactly what happened in that San Francisco Green Bay game. Still only ended up with 45 total points, but I do think that you not run the risk. That's not the phrase I'm looking for, but I do think these are the two kinds of teams with as much firepower as they have. And for the Chiefs and 49ers, that also includes their play calling, their play designing, their scheming, all of that with their respective head coaches. I do think this game has the potential to kind of go off the rails. I hate when people say, oh, this game is drunk. I hate that phrase, but I sort of feel like this is the kind of game where if someone was going to say it, you might actually be able to use it fairly accurately just because of how much firepower there is. And sometimes you expect low possessions and all of a sudden it's a low scoring game until it's not. And I just have this sort of feeling that late third into the fourth quarter, if this game is as competitive as I think it's going to be, that we're going to end up with quicker possessions, quick strikes, and maybe turnovers as well as teams get desperate, a la Brock Purdy.
I don't know about this game is drunk for games that are high scoring. I feel like this game is over caffeinated might be a better way to put it. I prefer to save this
That's fair.
I prefer to save this game is drunk for games where a lot of stupid stuff is happening. Like that one Cheez-It Bowl, like that Brock Purdy's been in a lot of games that were drunk. Because in college at Iowa State, like a lot of college games get drunk because they're college kids and that's what they do. But like, I think the example that you are using would be an example of a game that got over caffeinated, a game where all of a sudden the defenses are getting worn out because they're chasing around these great skill players. And all of a sudden here's Deebo Samuel taking an end around 60 yards. And on the next drive, here's a 48-yard run by Pacheco that sets up a 2-minute Chiefs touchdown drive. Like I could see that scenario because I do think that both of these defenses, let me put it this way. I think that the 49ers defense is susceptible. One thing that they are, a word that I see describing the 49ers defense a lot is static. They don't move around a lot. They don't change their coverages. They don't disguise a bunch pre-snap. They say, we do what we do, and you've got to figure out a way around and through us, but we're going to do what we do because we tackle well, because we've got good players all over the field, playmakers at all three levels. We're going to do what we do. The 49ers took great advantage of that, the Lions took advantage of the 49ers with a lot of pre-snap motion and a lot of things like that the Chiefs do a lot of as well. And I think the Chiefs, like the Lions in the first half before things went off the rails for the Lions, where they got drunk in the second half, I think that the Chiefs can do a lot of those similar things. For the Chiefs part, I'm not necessarily worried about how they match up man for man. I just have a ton of respect for the 49ers skill players, that they can work their way out of tight spots. They can create things in space. Deebo Samuel's a guy you feel like you've got hemmed in until 40 yards down the field, he's still running. Christian McCaffrey is the same kind of guy. Brandon Ayuk can be the same kind of guy. So the potential to break big plays is there for both teams, but I think it's going to be a lot about, I feel the more I think about this game, and we've got a whole other week plus to think about it, I really feel like this is about the Chiefs. How do they execute on offense? How well do they execute on defense? Are they able to patch holes, be in the right place, tackle effectively? Because I think if they play a clean game, it's a lot harder for the 49ers to do the things that they want to do.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. And I do think too, the key to this game, and you hear this from coaches all the time, you've got to play to your strengths. You have to follow your game plan more so than you have to rely on what the other team is doing. And I think as much as I have come up over the last 2 weeks now and said, Chiefs run defense is worrisome, not liking this, I'm worried about this Chiefs run defense, this is not the time to change things. You want a great example of that? Baltimore in the AFC Championship game. You stick to what you are good with. You dance with the one that has brought you there. It's the same principle that I've talked about with the Detroit Lions. We've all talked about with the Lions. You should have taken the points or you should have done this. It's what they do, and right or wrong, it's what they do. And I think the Chiefs are obviously a better coached and just better team in general than Detroit is, but it's the same kind of principle. Whatever got you here, focus on those things. If that means you're going to allow some extra rushing yards, fine. You're going to end up allowing some extra rushing yards. Christian McCaffrey and that scheme are that good. But stick to what you've been good with. Keep them out of the end zone. Hold them to field goals. Make enough plays on offense. You should still be able to win this game, even with all that other firepower.
I think the other thing, too, a game script that is beneficial to the Chiefs might look like what happened in the AFC Championship game, where they jump out to a lead, a 2-score lead, and then kind of sit on the 49ers with their defense in a way that the Lions couldn't do. Like, the Lions had a set, like, Lions tricked off a 17-point lead in the AFC Championship game. I feel very confident in saying if the Chiefs get a 17-point lead, they're not going to trick it off like the Lions did because they got a better defense. They can sit on you for a half if they get out to a 24-7 halftime lead. Boy, wouldn't Chiefs fans be in dreamland if that's how this thing unfolds. But I could see that game if it follows a similar script where the Chiefs offense is firing on all cylinders early, where they jump out 7-0 or 14-7 or 10-3, or now all of a sudden it's 17-3 or 17-7 like it was in the AFC Championship game. That's a script that I think lends itself to a bit of a lower scoring game because then you put the 49ers in a position where they don't want to be. And I know the 49ers got a ton of credit for coming back the way they did in the second half. Man, Brandon Ayuk caught that ball off that guy's face mask. Brock Purdy tried to throw a pick, and it bounced off the guy's face mask, and it turned into a 51-yard catch, which set up an easy touchdown. And then the game-time touchdown drive was a 20-yard touchdown drive. Like, let's be honest about what we saw. This is not all of a sudden, oh, man, the 49ers they're dangerous when they're behind. No, they still are the same team that we've seen all year long that is susceptible to the mistake, that is susceptible to Purdy making the wrong play or trying to make a play that's not there. Those things all still exist. And I think that the further ahead the Chiefs can manage to pull early in the game, if indeed they are able to pull ahead early, lends itself to a lower scoring affair. So I'm not telling anybody how to bet this one like yet. 47.5 to me, I don't know. I don't love that number one way or another. I'm not ready to commit to an over under. You guys, are you committing to anything yet? No, didn't think so.
No.
So it will. I think a lot of what happens will depend on who the game script early on favors. I think if the 49ers jump out early, we're more liable to see a shootout than if the Chiefs are the team with the upper hand after the first 15 or 30 minutes. We're going to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. One quick on second thought before we get out of here. I was wrong. The Chiefs actually fourth all time with the fewest points per game allowed in a 3-game playoff run. The Legion of Boom Seahawks in 2013 allowed 13.3 per game. The Chiefs were at 13.7. The Ravens of 2000, Buccaneers of 2002 still 1-2 on that list. But I had them transposed. I wanted to make sure I got that right. I pride myself on not lying to the people. I misled you. I apologize. We got more unintentional misleading to atone for on second thought. That's next here on 580 Sports Talk. Every Friday, we give ourselves a chance to atone or correct the record on a bad take or prediction we may have had from either the week prior or from long, long ago. We call it On Second Thought here on 580 Sports Talk. Brendan, I'm going to let you go first today. What's your On Second Thought for the week?
There is plenty of college basketball left to be played this season, thankfully. I was adamant, though, during transfer portal season this summer that the best player for the Kansas State Wildcats was going to be Tyler Perry. And if you wanted to argue right now, he is no better than the third best player for this team. I think we could hear that argument. He is extremely important. I don't think he has quite played to that level. I think he has, at the same time, gotten too much flack for his play this year. But, yeah, not the overwhelming number one like I was expecting or hoping he would be going into this year.
Yeah, I kind of expected a little bit different out of Perry as well. And I'm hoping, as we talked about in the wake of their bad loss to Oklahoma Tuesday night, I'm hoping that the way Perry played in the second half of that game, a lot more assertive, a lot more decisive, and scoring at a high volume. He had 23 in that loss. Hopefully that unlocks some things for him and he can be that player moving forward, because that player is a really good complement to what Cam Carter and Arthur Kaluma have already given the Cats. Spencer, what's your On Second Thought for the week?
I think it's pretty easy if you were to have guessed it. It would be the fact that for the last couple of weeks on the show, I've been calling that Ben Johnson would in fact be the next head coach of the Washington Commanders. And that I was saying it was going to happen. But I guess I should have listened to Adam Schefter at the beginning of the week when he said there was never a lock and that it's trending towards not being him being the head coach. And then on Tuesday, he takes his name out of the running by saying he wants to basically run it back in Detroit and try to go for a Super Bowl next year.
Like I was saying on yesterday's show, I didn't want Dan Quinn in Seattle because I thought that was a bad fit, but I don't think it's as bad a fit in Washington. I think Dan Quinn has a chance to succeed. It'll depend on who he surrounds himself with, certainly. But
I would say, too, yesterday I was kind of when the day started, I was totally against the hire. Mm-hmm. By the time the show ended, I was warming up to it.
So you're on second thoughting yourself is what I'm hearing.
Then I'm on second thoughting myself and that, but he's a safe hire, not a sexy hire.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's also what they probably said about Ron Rivera. And I'm sorry to have brought that up. I'm being mean, and that's not nice to me. For my On Second Thought, I want to go back to Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Detroit Lions. I was spectacularly wrong about Dan Campbell and the effectiveness of his style. I was so unimpressed with his opening statement, essentially his opening press conference when the Lions hired him, and all the kneecap biting stuff. I think I predicted on Twitter he'd only last 2 years. I couldn't have been less impressed. I thought, that rah macho man football guy, bite your kneecap stuff, like that's not going to play in an NFL locker room. And as it happens, I was wrong. It's actually playing really, really well in the Lions locker room. And even though the Lions are not playing on into Super Bowl 58, they did just compete. You two guys, anyway, the best season in your lives. Not me. I'm a little older. I remember 1991. But the best Lions season in your lives just wrapped up in the NFC Championship game. And Dan Campbell and the culture he's built is a big part of that. And, for some people, that rhetoric would have come off as corny and forced, and the locker room wouldn't have bought it, and he never would have had the buy-in from his players. But for some guys, it works. Like Pete Carroll, when he came back to the NFL, how's his rah-rah college stuff going to play in the NFL? There's no way that's going to win over an NFL locker room. Well, all those winning seasons and a championship later, obviously it resonated with his guys. And obviously what Dan Campbell does resonates with his guys. So I got to say, hand up, I was wrong about Dan Campbell. Don't love the way he coached the NFC Championship game, but I love what he's doing there in Detroit, and he's going to be there for a long time to come and probably successful for a long time to come, or at least until the brain drain inevitably does start at some point when he starts losing his coordinators. Won't happen this year, but Ben Johnson's going to be a head coach someday, just not of the Washington Commanders in 2024. Again, I'm sorry. I'm being mean to Spencer. Why am I doing this? I'm going to take a break. I'm going to stop being mean to Spencer, who I like. I'm going to stop being mean. I'm going to take a break. We're going to come back with Matt Derrick, our Chiefs insider here on 580 Sports Talk. His name is Matt Derrick. He's our Chiefs insider. He writes for ChiefsDigest.com. Check him out on Twitter at Matt Derrick. Check him out on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline every Friday at this time here on 580 Sports Talk. Matt, we've had a whole week to adjust to the reality, but when was the point in time where your doubt was the highest that the Chiefs could ultimately be where they are, which is Super Bowl 58?
I don't think it's probably any different than I would think a lot of people. I think probably even the one with the Chiefs had their biggest gut check, which was Christmas Day. I did not see that loss to the Raiders coming whatsoever, and that kind of performance. And that was the one that I think was absolutely the lowest point. I mean, I've been saying all along this team had a wide range of outcomes, and everything from a wild card round loss to Super Bowl championship would not surprise me, but my lowest expectations of going to the Super Bowl was absolutely Christmas Day. That was, to me, the lowest point of this team's season.
Well, here they are, Super Bowl 58, the matchup next Sunday against the 49ers. To get there, they had to beat the Baltimore Ravens on the road in the AFC Championship game. What will be, you think, the lingering memory of that AFC Championship victory for the Chiefs? They're starting to pile them up, 4 in the last 5 years. What will linger about this one to you?
That's a really good question. I mean, because I think that the two things that stand out to me, at least, about that game right now are that it was just the Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce game. And it certainly doesn't help that, it's the game that Justin Tucker got in their face and stepped in the Superman's cape and poked the bear and kept things started. But yeah, I mean, to me, just the way that Patrick and Travis really just kind of dominated that first half performance of, for the Chiefs. And then, I mean, even there was a couple of marquee plays. I mean, I'm always going to remember that L'Jarius Sneed knocking the ball out of Zay Flowers' hands. I mean, that was, to me, the absolute signature play of the entire game. And I think that all those plays and everything will take on more meaning if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl. But I think, especially that L'Jarius Sneed play, I think it'll take on more meaning if he stays in Kansas City, beyond this year. If he's gone after this year, maybe it won't be as big of a memory, but I think that was the signature play of the game.
For the Chiefs to win a conference championship in the fashion that they did, where they took an early lead and then they just sat on the Ravens for 30 minutes and didn't let them up off the mat, even though the offense didn't score in the second half, that game felt a lot more firmly in Kansas City's control throughout the second half than most 10-point deficits do because of the way that the defense was playing. Did you envision at any point in the Mahomes era that this would be the formula for a Chiefs team to win a game like that, to start fast on offense, build the big lead, and then just put the opponent in a sleeper hold with an elite defensive performance, particularly a team with the MVP?
Yeah, I would not have expected that the Chiefs, once Mahomes was counting like $45 million against the cap, they would have the league's second best scoring defense and would go out and be I think right now they're the fifth best scoring defense in the playoffs in the last 25 years, 30 years. No, I mean, I never would have imagined. I mean, the dream, I think, when you have your quarterback making that much money is you're saying to yourself, hey, if you have a top 10, top 12 defense, you can win a Super Bowl any given year. And even like Nick Bolton was talking about the other day, saying, hey, back in training camp, we're talking about having a top 10 defense. That's all they were shooting for. Their goal wasn't necessarily even to be the number 2 scoring defense in the league, but they've been that good. And no, I never thought they would be able to have a defense like this with Mahomes, especially when he started making some real money.
We're chatting with Matt Derrick. He covers the Kansas City Chiefs for ChiefsDigest.com. He is our Chiefs insider, joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick, and of course, all of his great Chiefs coverage at ChiefsDigest.com. Matt, we were talking about this from the perspective of both teams a little bit earlier on in the show, but from the Chiefs' perspective, depending on how this game goes in 9 days' time, who among individuals, who do you think has the most to gain with a win, and who do you think might have the most to lose with a loss?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of divide that up into kind of monetary and non-monetary wins. I mean, if the Chiefs win, hey, it's just another piece of the legacy for Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. That's just, one more feather in their cap for their Hall of Fame resume. Then there's, to me, the monetary ones. I mean, hey, if L'Jarius needs a big player in the Super Bowl, and with his year he's had, he should absolutely be one of the top paid corners in the league during the offseason and free agency. Chris Jones, it's a big one. If he has a big Super Bowl game, once again coming off this year, and if he gets a chance to hit free agency or even make a deal with the Chiefs, he's going to make some coin. And for Chris, I mean, I think maybe he might be the one that has the most to gain because he's kind of both. I mean, not only would he have a financial gain for winning this game, but legacy too, because, hey, with his Pro Bowls and 3 Super Bowl rings, at this point, would you be able to keep him out of the Hall of Fame? Might not be a first ballot guy, but I think he absolutely would get in. And, there's probably quite a few. I mean, any Chiefs player that's going to be with Mahomes for a while, you rattle off 3 or 4 rings, you're suddenly going to be on the short list for the Hall of Fame. So I think a lot of people, those are the guys that stand out to me that I think have the most to gain.
I am under the assumption, Matt, and maybe I will be proven wrong. Kyle Shanahan does like to go into panic mode in big games, but I am of the assumption that the 49ers won't go as off script as the Ravens did in the AFC Championship game, and they won't get bored of the run, and they want to run the ball. They want to give it to Christian McCaffrey and let that offensive line go to work. I imagine the 49ers are going to run the ball a lot. So with the Chiefs not having Derrick out there, unfortunately, due to that tricep injury that ended his season, someone else is going to have to step up and make some plays on that defensive front and in that linebacker core. So who do you think in this matchup, knowing the 49ers in all likelihood are going to commit to the ground game, who's got to step up and fill that slack?
Yeah, it's a really good question because, I mean, if you're the 49ers, I mean, I think that you're sophisticated enough to not only, know that you need to stick to your strengths, which I don't think the Ravens did. I think they abandoned their DNA and their principles and got away from it pretty early. But, not only do you stick to what you do best, but you attack the weak points. And so, hey, I don't think that the 49ers are going to go out there and run right at Nick Bolton. I don't think they're just going to run right at Chris Jones. So it's going to be the other guys that step up. So to me, I mean, if the Chiefs win, it would not surprise me at all if the player who leads them in tackles isn't somebody that, we're just not expecting, that they're running to the side where maybe Drew Tranquil and Leo Chenal are. They're running away from Nick Bolton, and those guys have big games. Or Tamari Connor, who obviously has had some really nice performances. Maybe he ends up being that different. It also wouldn't surprise me if a turnover is the key of this game, in which case I think you could bring any of the cornerbacks and defensive backs into play. Obviously, that can happen at any time, and I like Trent McDuffie would be absolutely positioned to create a turnover because he's just one of those ball hawk kind of guys, even if it's fumbles that you're talking about. But it wouldn't surprise me if, one of those guys or just somebody who's not what you'd say with the A-list defender and not who you immediately think of, a Justin Reed, a Nick Bolton, Chris Jones, even a George Karlaftis, maybe it's somebody else who comes up with the big game because, the 49ers will be in their mindset. And I'm with you too. I mean, I think that the 49ers, really it's going to be interesting to see what they do if they get a lead and maybe the Chiefs do finally adjust and they're able to shut down the run game. How do the 49ers go about it? Because you certainly know that from some of the comments we've heard from San Francisco this week, guys who've been there before, I think they're going to be pretty tight if they have a lead in this game because they know that, hey, these Chiefs got them once before and they're going to be afraid of a letdown.
Matt Derrick, our guest here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline. And Matt, you were tweeting earlier from the press conferences. You said Nagy talked about Kadarius Toney getting back into practice, and then Dave Toub said it was a possibility he could be a punt returner when it comes to Kadarius Toney. And then Travis Kelce, said the team's still behind him. What do you make of the Toney situation right now with what he said on Instagram Sunday morning, and then just everything, and then coming back to practice this week?
Yeah, and it doesn't surprise me that the Chiefs and Toney have just pretty much punted this week on the whole story, doing their best to act like it didn't happen. I don't know. I mean, we've been talking about it this week at Arrowhead about just what this team is going to do with Kadarius Toney, and nobody's got a firm grasp on it. I mean, Is he going to go to Las Vegas and play? I don't know. Is he not going to go to Las Vegas at all? I mean, I could see that scenario too. It's once again a wide range of outcomes on what the Derrick Tony situation, but I just don't understand why the Chiefs would even put themselves into a position where a Super Bowl week of all things, you're just going to show up on Monday with opening night with thousands of media members there and a lot of people from New York media that'll want to be there, bombarding Kadarius Toney with questions about that Instagram post and what he really thinks and is he hurt and all of this. I don't get it. I mean, I really thought that the Chiefs would be smart if they got out in front of this week and really had, Kadarius address it so that he could just, hey, if he's going to be on Media Row next week and he's going to be in all of these availabilities, that he can say, hey, you know what? I addressed this last week. Go back and see what I said. I'm not going to talk about it. It's behind me. Because now it's just going to be the story of, at least Monday night, if not beyond, depending on what he says. And I just don't think that the Chiefs need the distraction. So I don't know. I mean, now could he play? I mean, he's been doing the same things in at least the portion of practice that's been open to the media this week, the same things he always does. They could absolutely play him. The question now, obviously, factors into it is that they've got Sky Moore, who's been practicing again, and his date to be activated is February 7th, so they could activate him still. If they put Charles Omenihu on IR, they've got a roster spot for him. I don't think they're going to play 7 receivers, though, so it would be 6. So would it be Sky Moore instead of Kadarius? I don't know, but I go back and my final wrap up on it is I go back to the fact that I think it would be incredibly difficult to put Kadarius in that position again because he hasn't played in almost 6 weeks. I mean, it's basically been the same amount of time before they shoved him out there in week 1 against the Lions. And we saw what happened at that point. He was rusty, and it hurt him, and it hurt the team. So I just don't see the logic in just shoving him out there in the Super Bowl when he hasn't played in so long.
And Matt, one more from me here. Brant Till's hired away by the Panthers. He was the Chiefs VP of football ops. And what did he mean to this franchise? And what is his loss going to mean for salary cap and everything going forward? Because from what I understand, he was kind of that guru for the Chiefs.
Yeah, Brant's absolutely been considered one of the smartest guys in the room in that group for a long time, and he's got feet kind of in both worlds. I mean, he's got a foot in scouting, and he's got a foot in kind of the business side of the team operations too, and everything. You're right; he was kind of the father, if you will, of the structure of the Patrick Mahomes contract when they were kicking around ideas and trying to figure out how to get it done. Brant was kind of the guy who came up with the rolling guarantees and the way to kind of structure it and everything. So a lot of that, but Chris Shea is also huge in all of those parts of the negotiations and the salary cap. So, having Chris Shea around still would absolutely be huge for this team, especially from just the framework and the legal aspects of it. I'm sure they'll backfill, the branch job with someone else who's got that kind of skill set, but maybe just not the experience. So I think they'll be okay there, but I do think they'll miss his football mind as well because he has been a good evaluator for them, not just on the business side but on the personnel side. So he should be great in that new role in Carolina. I don't know if I would have left if I were him. I mean, being in his position in Kansas City feels like maybe better than being a spot up in Carolina. But I wish him the best. He's been a great guy in Kansas City, a lot of fun to work with. So I wish him the best, but I always worry when teams players go to organizations that have just been in my group of teams that don't know what they're doing. And Carolina's kind of in that category right now.
Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com is our Chiefs insider. He joined us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline on Fridays here on 580 Sports Talk. Matt, when are you heading out to Vegas?
I will be going down Monday morning, so I'll be out there for all the nonsense starting Monday night.
We got about 30 seconds here. What are you most looking forward to about the Super Bowl experience in Vegas?
I want to see the Giants' fear. I mean, I guess that's probably the biggest thing.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the hoopla and everything like that, nah. I mean, and the weather's going to be terrible next week, so I'm very disappointed in that. So I guess just seeing that big sphere.
Take lots of pictures and tweet lots of pictures of the sphere, Matt. We'll trust you to do that.
Oh,
Enjoy
I will.
Enjoy your trip. We'll talk to you next Friday, Matt. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
That is Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. He's our Chiefs insider, and he joins us every Friday here on 580 Sports Talk. That's going to put a wrap on the 3 o'clock hour of the program. Coming up in the 4 o'clock hour, we'll be joined right off the rip by Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll get his perspective and look back on the AFC Championship game victory and a look ahead to Super Bowl 58. We'll also crown a short week winner on What Is Wrong With You, and we'll talk a little college hoops as well. That's all coming up on 580 Sports Talk. Let's get it. Hour number 3, 580 Sports Talk on this Friday. Dan Lucero, Brendan Brzezinski, Spencer Dupuis with you. And we're going to hit the ground running in this 4 o'clock hour. Pleased to be joined via telephone by the great voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, Mitch Holthus, who joins us on today's program, a courtesy of our friends at Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. Mitch, once upon a time, in a time before number 15, the Kansas City Chiefs had lost 6 consecutive home playoff games. And I know that it is heartbreaking, uniquely in football, to have all that build up for a home playoff game and then to have to leave that stadium on the losing end of that game. The Chiefs now have had the experience in back-to-back weeks of going on the road to end someone's season and doing it in the AFC Championship game against a Ravens team that was favored, that many were saying was easily the best in the NFL. For the Chiefs to leave that building victorious, take us back to M&T Bank Stadium on Sunday, Mitch, and describe to us, if you can, the sound of that silence that the Chiefs left that building and that city in when they walked out with the Lamar Hunt Trophy.
To accurately describe or answer your question would be to start with how loud it was to begin that game. That was a cauldron once again, much like Buffalo was the week prior, because of the scene that the city of Baltimore had not hosted an AFC Championship game in 50 years since the Colts were there, and they don't like the Chiefs. You mentioned that they were the best team in the regular season, and Lamar Jackson will win the MVP. But for the Chiefs to take the fight to Baltimore, who was clearly interested in trying to intimidate the Chiefs, and for the Chiefs to stare down the bully and fight down the bully, Baltimore didn't like it. It also brought up, I think, and validated that point that I made to you a week ago, where the Chiefs now with 353 playoff victories represented on their roster, and the first and second year guys are now 58-0 in the postseason, showed up in that game, because only 28 of the 53 Ravens players, they won their first playoff game the week prior against Houston. It showed up with Zay Flowers. This was just his second playoff game. Roquan Smith, who runs over Trey Smith at the end, he's played in a few more, but had only won one game against Houston the week prior. I think all that showed up as the pressure mounted. One team was able to surge ahead and the other wilted. And I'm sorry, that's just the way it was. I've been on the other side of those, but on the right side this time, and to win on the road now twice. I haven't done the research, but you guys maybe do in your spare time. Who in the league in the last 5 to 7 to 10 years has won the quality of back-to-back road wins the Chiefs have, winning at Buffalo and at Baltimore?
They have taken down, Mitch, I do know this, the top 3 teams in the AFC in point differential. They lined them up and they knocked them down in order: Miami, Buffalo, and then Baltimore, who led the conference in point differential. And they did that on the road, and they held Baltimore to just 10 points. What stood out the most to you about the defensive performance in that game, holding the MVP and that Baltimore offense to just 10 points at home in a championship game?
To be highly disciplined, highly organized, and to be highly confusing to Lamar Jackson and the Ravens defense. And then to defend the runs early to where Baltimore just disbanded it. I mean, they just ignored their strength in the second half. And getting the 52-yard field goal at the end of the half by Butker was large, because the Ravens had never trailed by double digits or 2 scores all year. It's the same psychological effect that the second half rally by the Chiefs had on the Eagles in Super Bowl 57. It does teams good to go through some challenges in the regular season. If you can survive those challenges like the Chiefs did this year, it becomes a laboratory for dealing with them when it's way more intense and way more is on the line in the postseason. But the fact that the Chiefs defended the base runs early with one, a couple of exceptions, the 4th and 1 run for 21 yards by Lamar Jackson, but then to give Jackson so many different looks, and everybody played at a high level. So it was impressive.
Something that players and coaches alike have talked about this week, and we have discussed it here on the program, is trust and communication and faith and belief that the coaches and the players have in each other, even with guys who have gone through difficult stretches. This has been a difficult year for Marquez Valdes-Scantling. He has had some very notable instances of plays where he did not make the play, and it was injurious to the Chiefs' chances of winning a football game. And when you go through times like that, it's easy to watch from afar and say he can't do it, or he's not good enough to do it, or he shouldn't be trusted to do it. But that's just not the attitude in that locker room. It's not the attitude of the coaching staff. And the manifestation of that is Marquez Valdes-Scantling making the catch on the deep pass on 3rd and 9 that effectively ends the AFC Championship game. What is it about the culture the Chiefs have built that enables players like that who may have had a difficult time? And I think even back to last year and Sky Moore's clutch punt return in the AFC Championship game and the touchdown he scored in the Super Bowl after having a rough time with punt returns throughout the season. What is it about the culture of this team that enables the players to have such deep-rooted faith in each other, even through difficult times throughout a season?
It's a lesson in leadership for any business leader listening to us, or any coach or any administrator in a school, because it's really starting with Andy Reid. Your quick answer is Andy Reid. Andy Reid develops a relationship with these players of belief and understanding and encouraging them to basically keep firing. And we're going to put you in a position to be successful. So just, stay on it. Now, I would also tell you in the case of Quez, and let's throw in the 230-plus yarders he had against Buffalo the week prior that were very hard catches. Those were excellent, great throws by Mahomes, but the coverage was outstanding by Buffalo. But the formation of the triangle that I mentioned that's been a part of this 5-game winning streak, and I mentioned it the last several weeks with you, has also been a part of this, because the bulk of the offense, the targets in the passing game, including Pacheco in here, have been to Rice, Kelsey, and Pacheco. That then takes the pressure off a Quez or a Justin Watson or a Richie James Jr. to say, you're going to be involved. You've got to run your routes. But you're not going to get targeted 10 times. So we're going to reduce those targets. It does two things. One, you just have to focus on the lesser volume of work that's required. But two, the defense will lose you. The defense will either lose interest or get distracted. And now all of a sudden, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who at one time with the Green Bay Packers, I believe in 2020, led the National Football League in yards per catch. So if you lose track of Marquez Valdes-Scantling, you are exposing yourself defensively to paying the price he's going to get behind you, which he did against Bills twice and this play. Coach understands that. He knows it. He knows that is in the repertoire of MVS, and he knows the team needs him. But we're going to reduce the load. You're not going to get 8 targets. You're going to get 3. Run your route. You may get 5, but just do your job the best you can and focus on those 3 to 4 routes we'll give you.
We're talking to Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, here on 580 Sports Talk. Our chats with Mitch are brought to you by both Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. And by the way, Mitch was spot on. 2020, that was a really good Green Bay Packers team. 20.9 yards a catch for MVS, led the entire National Football League that year. I wanted to flip over to the defensive side of the ball, though, Mitch, and talk about specifically Steve Spagnuolo. And we know that Spags is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. Right now, he might be the best defensive coordinator in the NFL with the way he has gotten this defense to play at this level with still so much youth. We talked about that a bunch last year, all the young guys. Well, they're only 1 year older. There's still a bunch of young guys who are on this defensive roster. So I guess my big picture question is, why and what? What has Spags done to go from the last few years where these have been pretty good defenses? Last year's defense was a very solid unit, to get them this year to buy in, to believe, to improve to the point where there's a very credible argument this is the best defense in the NFL.
Well, let's start with Veach, because Veach has done an excellent job of finding players who have high skill but high cerebral capability. What happened with the second-year defenders this year, of which last year the Chiefs set an NFL record, playing 8 rookies on defense and special teams and winning an AFC championship and a Super Bowl with that group of young guys. That group of young guys is so mature. I mentioned this even a year and a half ago, so mature emotionally that, yeah, they enjoyed the parade. But to a man, they started right away in preparing for the 23 season, all of them. McDuffie and Karlaftis and Cook. I know he's hurt now. Najee Johnson got hurt in training camp. But all of these guys that they said, we're going to go, we've taken Calc 1, but when do we take Calc 2 and Calc 3? And that's what they have done. And then you add Tranquil and Mike Edwards, who are in the same vein, super smart, talented players. So now Spags can do even more. He's bringing you stuff with 3 safeties. I mentioned this in our training camp reports. In those days in August, when seemingly people aren't just, tuned in, there's going to be stuff that happens this time of year that was late in August. And it was the fact that Spags took these young guys and took another step forward with different personnel groups. And they've all been able to make plays. Excellent tackling group, more physical than you'd think, but so smart that they're giving these quarterbacks, and in some cases, elite quarterbacks, all they can handle with not just pressure and coverage, but with looks where they get tricked. It's actually working their principles against themselves. It's been very impressive. And then you throw in the rookies. Shamari Connor has been great to be added to this group, and he fits this. He's got the same mold. And Felix has not had a chance to play much just because of the loaded talent. Now with Amenahu out, he will be called upon to play enough. Again, much like MVS, you're not going to be out there 60 snaps, but you're going to be out there about 12 to 15. And we need the best snaps you've got in your life to win Super Bowl 58. And Felix can sit there and look at Brock Purdy going, yeah, saw him in the Big 12. It's just K-State and Iowa State, so let's go. But this is a cerebral, tough, physically gifted group that they've got. And again, the 58-0 is not a coincidence, but that's a long-winded answer to your question. That's why Spags could go, let's go to another level and another level from the scheme and confusion I can create.
What do you think this means to Steve Spagnuolo? I know he mentioned post-game, I don't remember what outlet he was speaking with, but he said he was almost a little bit embarrassed about the T-shirt thing, but now Justin Reed has sold into the thousands of in Spags We Trust T-shirts, and he was not quite choked up at the podium today, but, he had to take a moment to kind of chuckle to himself and to compose his thoughts. What do you think this run and this buy-in from his guys means to Steve Spagnuolo?
Well, as you get older, and I'll attest to this, you get more reflective on your whole career. And I think Spags is having the time of his life. He has guys around him that he genuinely likes, and not just his players, but he loves Joe Cullen on the defensive line, and Brandon Daly at the linebackers, and Dave Merritt with the DBs, and Daniel DeLessio at the safeties. These are all guys that he loves, and they're all cerebral, and they're all tough, and they're all like, bring it on, let's go. And they're basically having some fun. Spags is a good dude, man. He's a real, genuine dude. And he knows that this league, he's been in it long enough. Okay, the T-shirt's kind of funny, ha-ha, but, God's opposed to the proud but gives grace to the humble. And that's how Spags lives his life. So he's not going out there thinking, I'm the smartest guy in the world, although he might be. And the T-shirt's ha-ha-ha, but it's not getting to Spags' brain or hubris at all. He's just having the time of his life because he loves the guys he's coaching, because he can give them all he's got and they'll take it in and absorb it and execute it. And the same with the coaching staff that has been loyal and imaginative and fits the same kind of characteristics the players have.
And Mitch, moving to the offensive line, obviously, with Joe Thuney kind of questionable going into next week, Allegretti's filled in really nice. What have you seen from him being that close to the team that can be you can see a guy who could end up becoming a starter at some point?
No question. Now, he's been around since 2019, and he's probably the most missed answer in the trivia question, who are the 8 guys that are on the active roster now that played in Super Bowl 54 against the 49ers? They'll list off the 7 others pretty fast, or maybe James Winchester will stump them, but Allegretti is the one they do not mention. He has been around for a long time, and he has prepared every week, every spring, every summer, every training camp as if he is a starter. They used him as the sixth man when they go 6 offensive linemen. Now, with him being in the left guard role with Tooney out, that makes that a little more difficult. And who do you use? Is it Wanya Morris? Is it Caliendo? But you're taking Allegretti out of that role. But Nick Allegretti as a starter in the regular season is 13-1. He is 3-1 now in the playoffs. The only loss was Super Bowl 55. And that was a banged up offensive line and not much his fault, really. But Allegretti is, you would hire him every day to work for you, or you would work for him. He has that kind of countenance about him. Again, smart, tough, but he prepares whether he's going to play 60 snaps or 7 special team snaps. He's going to prepare the same way every time. Brian Barnhart's the voice of the Fighting Illini, and he texted me after this last win and said, "Hey, man, great, way to go. Go get a Super Bowl." And I said, "You'd be Illini proud of Nick Allegretti because he is a great representative of the U of I. And he's just such an asset and a testimony to the depth of this team."
Wrapping things up with Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, who joins us weekly during the Chiefs season, thanks to our friends at Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. We can start our look ahead now to Super Bowl 58 with the 49ers, just like the first of these Chiefs Super Bowls in the Mahomes era, the opponent waiting on the Chiefs.
Well, Brennan, before we transition, let me just kind of finish with what has been the thesis of my week this week.
Sure.
And I started with it on WIVW. We ran on Channel 13 on Wednesday. We ran it on your station and all the network stations in my Minute with Mitch. And what I've learned in waiting 21 years to win a playoff game or thinking, God, would we ever get to a Super Bowl? And I'm like, why do they have a bye week before the Super Bowl? Like, just play the game. I don't know if you guys have ever thought that. Now, after being in 4 of these in 5 years, you could almost use 2 bye weeks. It has been a beehive of activity. It's the reason I wasn't on with you guys last night. It's crazy what goes on under this bye week, and you have to handle your business personally and professionally, because when you hit the ground in Las Vegas, it is a 3-ring circus every day, noon, night. It's crazy. I've often said this, and this is my postulate. You can't win the game this week, Brendan, but you can lose the game this week. If you don't handle your business, including who gets tickets, who's coming, Cousin Eddie's coming, where's Cousin Eddie going to stay, transportation, don't hit me with all that next week. It's over. And Coach Reed tells them that. By Thursday, by end of business yesterday, all that needed to be taken care of. Because teams who don't have the experience get run down this week or don't use this week. And when they hit next week, it's such a whirlwind that all that stuff becomes an additional distraction, and you can lose the game because of it.
No doubt, Mitch. And certainly the Chiefs organization, now no stranger to it, having gone to their 4th in 5 years. The 49ers are in their 2nd in 5 years, of course, with these 2 teams meeting in Super Bowl 54. So I want to leave on this thought, Mitch, as we look ahead to Super Bowl 58. What is the most fascinating aspect of this matchup? When you knew on Sunday night into Monday morning, it was going to be Chiefs 49ers again, just like it was in Super Bowl 54. What interested you the most about seeing these 2 teams on the grandest stage in football?
Well, there's obvious ones. The not so obvious is the efficiency of San Francisco's offense, which is the most efficient in the league, meaning there's no wasted plays. They get a lot done with reduced snaps. If you look at Brock Purdy's numbers, he's been incredibly efficient. But that leads to the obvious, and that is does Purdy have enough in this game to beat Mahomes? Because it does come down to quarterback play. And Mahomes is wiping dudes out. I mean, he's taken on Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen on the road back-to-back weeks and slayed them both. Took on Tua Tagovailoa. Last year he took on Jalen Hurts. So that becomes, and took on Joe Burrow. Right? He's taken all these guys on. And now here's Brock Purdy, who's talented, good player. But, you know, and last year he had some unfinished business getting knocked out in the NFC Championship game, basically. But that to me is intriguing. But I'm going to give you a nugget of the night. And it deals with the defenses, which I think is Let me find this. This is one I'm digging out. I've not done the super deep dive into them. That begins tomorrow because there's been so much to take care of. But the San Francisco defense, follow me on this, compared to the Chiefs. Now, this is percentage of defensive drives ending in these outcomes. San Francisco, 36% of the opponent drives ended in punts. 44% of Chiefs' opponent drives ended in punts. Scoring for the San Francisco defense was 34%. A lot of those were field goals, but still 34%. The Chiefs defense, 28%. The turnover percentage for San Francisco was 16%. The Chiefs, again, only forced 17 turnovers in the regular season, but in the postseason, they forced 4. They're +2, but only 9% turnover. What's the conclusion? San Francisco's defense, this is much like Baltimore. This is very similar to Baltimore. The Baltimore defense has to get takeaways, and they have to get you in down and distance that's unfavorable. And quite honestly, if you look at the numbers, and I've crop dusted them, I'll do the deep dive starting tomorrow. The San Francisco offense has protected its defense, and that's why they're in this game. So if you can neutralize the efficiency of the San Francisco offense and Brock Purdy and his cast of really talented players, all of a sudden you put them in peril, much like you did Baltimore, because the defense has to have the offense kind of drag them along, if that makes sense. So those are the things that came to mind over the past 72 to 96 hours, or immediately after, knowing that this was going to be our opponent when we got wheels down late Sunday into Monday morning.
Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Kansas City Chiefs, joins us throughout the Chiefs season, thanks to our friends at Hy-Vee and Azura Credit Union. Mitch, we so much appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, it's an extremely busy time as you prepare for Super Bowl 58. When do you get into Vegas?
I will go with the team. So when you see all the social media of the guys walking down the jet ramp, I'll be with them. So we'll get wheels down 5-ish, 4:30-ish Pacific time. So it's 2 hours earlier than here, but we'll be wheels up from KCI at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. But this week is the most unbye week there is. And you, again, seriously, you got to take care of your business this week or you get crushed next week.
No doubt about it. And Mitch, while everything that happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, I do have to know, do you have a favorite table or card game just in general?
I know I'm not just into it that much. I went out there for basketball several times doing basketball games, and a guy said, here's the roulette way to do it. You do it in roulette. That's how you make your money. And here's my formula, guaranteed. And I didn't have a lot of money, and I lost it all in like 3 minutes. I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do this. So if you want to just kind of, putz around and play blackjack for like low amounts, then that's fine. But I'm not super into it. I'll be real honest with you. I don't mean a fuddy-duddy, but that ain't my bag, man.
Hey, look, the house always wins, and I think the Chiefs are starting to feel like the house to much of the rest of the AFC as they head to their 4th Super Bowl in 5 years. Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Chiefs.
I'd rather go to a Vegas Golden Knights hockey game.
Hey, you know what? That's a better use of time. Maybe UNLV Hoops is at home, something like that. You take in a sporting event or a show. That is a better use of your money, Mitch. I think you're 100% right.
If I'm going to burn money, I'll go watch the Golden Knights take on Edmonton Oilers.
There you go. Go see Connor McDavid if he's in town. Thanks for your time, Mitch. We appreciate you so much.
All right, boys. See you.
That is Mitch Holthus, the voice of the Chiefs. We're going to take a break, come back. What is wrong with you? Coming up next, we'll crown a weekly champ on 580 Sports Talk. It's a short week of What Is Wrong With You, only 2 days. We're going to crown our first weekly champion of the month of February here on What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Top City Metal Supply. They cut the metal you need to your specifications, saving time, money, and material. Never settle when it comes to metal. Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. Our champion from yesterday, Florida man. We had another Florida man story. A gentleman who went into a Christian thrift store completely nude. Their act of charity was to give him some shorts to put on, but he also stole a shirt and left the store. And so he is also being charged with theft in addition to the charge of indecent exposure, because again, completely nude. Rolling into the thrift store. No drug or alcohol charges, Brendan. I know we always joke about ties going to sobriety, but this guy, no drug or alcohol charges, just rolled into this thrift store naked as a jaybird, and they were willing to break him off a free pair of shorts, but the $5 shirt, nah, man, too far. Don't steal.
Maybe he thought it was a different kind of store.
Maybe he did. A very different kind of store. Anyway, that's our winner. We got 2 new stories today. Brendan, you've got the first one. I'm going to let you go first.
All right. Well, you'll never believe this. My story involves more nudity, and this time there is alcohol involved. A woman was seen pulling her pants down on a Frontier Airlines flight last year and is now facing federal charges. Dan, you've flown Frontier before. This sounds like par for the course, really.
Unfortunately, the experience on Frontier Airlines of late has not been the same that I recall in the glory days of Frontier Airlines. We used to have fun animals on the tail. And they were the best budget carrier in America for a very long time, I felt. I no longer feel that way about Frontier Airlines.
So let's meet 60-year-old Dulce Huertas, who was caught on camera flashing passengers during the flight from Orlando to Philadelphia back in November. Footage shared with News 6 TV by passenger Julie Hartman shows Huertas saying, "Sorry, everybody," before pulling her pants down and squatting in the aisle.
Oh, no.
In an affidavit filed Tuesday, an FBI agent said Huertas had been served precisely 2 alcoholic drinks during the flight. Maybe they were Red's Apple Ales. If you know, you know. She got out of her seat just before the flight landed, stating, quote, "I have to pee." However, the affidavit states that a flight attendant told Huertas that she needed to stay seated, prompting Huertas to begin yelling and cursing at the attendant before sitting back down. Agents said that after the plane landed and was taxied to the gate, Huertas began cussing at passengers around her, and security was called in for help. Quote, "Once the plane arrived at the gate and the seatbelt sign was turned off, but before any external doors were open to allow passengers to leave, Huertas resumed her aggressive behavior and pushed passengers out of the way as she moved to the front of the plane. As Huertas approached the plane's lavatory, she was stopped by flight attendants, leading her to pull her pants and underwear down as she squatted as if to urinate in the aisle. However, she was seen pulling her pants back up before yelling, quote, "I don't give a bleep. No, bleep you. I gotta go." She eventually walked away and confronted a flight attendant. Another passenger on the flight could be heard saying, "That poor little boy," referencing the small child who was seated next to her. Huertas told the flight attendant, let me pass, though the attendant stood in her way to allow another attendant to disarm the plane's main door. Due to her actions, the attendant was concerned she might be going to open one of the external doors to activate an emergency slide. Investigators explained that Huertas, quote, "used her belly to bump the flight attendant, though Huertas still wasn't able to get past. Thus, she continued to yell, curse, and threaten to kill multiple passengers."
All right. Yeah, that's... Look, I understand when you got to go, you got to go. And, you know, especially if you've been drinking, you break the seal. It's really hard to not have it happen. It has to happen when it has to happen. But at the same time, man, like, you got to do it before. Like, you have an idea of when they're about to turn the seatbelt sign off and begin their descent. That's when you got to go and empty the chamber and make sure you're good for the landing and for the taxiing and for all of that. Now, typically on a flight, they're pretty chill. Like, if they turn off the seatbelt sign and you get up and you got to get to the bathroom, I've seen that happen before. I've seen people get up and use the airplane bathroom once you've landed safely, the seatbelt sign is off, and you're at the gate. But with as much a fool as this woman was acting, I'm not exactly surprised that it went the way it went.
I mean, look, again, if you're going to go as far as to drop trow and attempt to go to the bathroom in the aisle of the plane because you had like 2 wine coolers. Clearly, you should probably be watching your alcohol intake more than you were. And again, she pulled her pants down and threatened to go in front of everybody. God and everybody was watching her.
Yeah, that can't do that. That poor little boy and everyone else who may have been scarred by that experience. Yeah. My story also involves Florida and nudity. A little more indirectly, but we go to Florida, where a mom of 3 has been banned from dropping off and picking up her young from a Florida Christian school because she advertises her OnlyFans account on an oversized car decal. 35-year-old Michelle Klein told the New York Post she's now forced to walk her children across a busy street to get them to class, and that some parents want her family expelled from Liberty Christian Preparatory School in Tavares, Florida, altogether. Klein told the Post, I don't think it's right. People are going to be offended by all sorts of things, different bumper stickers, whatever. But at the end of the day, this is something that supports my family. Probably how our kids got into this fancy schmancy Christian prep school. Klein first launched her explicit venture, which clears up to $20,000 a month, roughly 3 years ago. It's only me and my husband, she said. No one else is brought in, male or female. We always worried the cameras in the bedroom. So we said, hey, let's make some money off this. You can see the picture in the story. It's a large OnlyFans logo. And beneath OnlyFans, it says .com and then the / and then her username. She goes by Piper Fawn online. What you Google on your own time is none of my business. Probably don't Google that one at work. Several parents began to take note of the sticker during pickup and drop off at the school, and word began to spread about Klein's vocation. A source told the Post the student was expelled for looking up her page on his personal phone on school grounds last year, which is very funny. Fellow parent Lexi Thomas argues that it promotes pornography on school grounds and violated the school's Christian-based code of conduct. Where did Lexi Thomas make her complaints? On her TikTok account, where she's a parenting influencer with more than 220,000 followers. I bet she's not clearing $20,000 a month on the TikTok, though. So Klein has complied with the directive to drop her kids off across the street, but says she has no plans to pull her children from school. So, look, everybody got to make a living, and I'm not here to shame anyone's choices for how it is that they make a living. At the same time, like, that is what you are advertising, and you have to know at least a little bit that there are going to be some places where you drive your OnlyFans mobile, and it's not going to be particularly well received. You have to know that. You have to maybe have a little more feel for that. And look, I'm all about entrepreneurship and the hustle.
Well, I think feel is what got her. I think feel, Dan, is what got her in trouble in the first place here.
I don't know if it got her in trouble, but it did make her a lot of money.
I'll tell you what, it's a lot of money.
Hey, $20,000 a month, man! I could do so much with $20,000 a month. Are you kidding me?
I don't see you. You say that, but they got
no kidding.
They got to do their taxes.
Yeah,
every 3 months or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's
you lose out a lot of money on taxes.
It's not untaxed. That's true. Oh, it's Florida. It's no income tax in Florida. They're fine.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And they got nothing to worry about. They're raking it in. You do quick back of the napkin, man. $240,000 a year. You take some pictures and you advertise them on your car. I guess that's fine. It's a very American story. A woman with an OnlyFans account being called out by a woman who is a TikTok parenting influencer. America in 2024. Anyway, that's my story today. I do not think it beats the woman who tried to pee in the middle of the aisle on the Frontier flight.
I agree.
I think that one's going to win today.
Yeah.
Does that beat the naked Florida man? We have naked Florida man and naked Florida woman. Who do we like?
Who?
I know that we usually do Ty Goes to Sobriety, like you mentioned, but this woman had like 2 miniature-sized Mike's Hard lemonades and then had a complete meltdown. No, just little airplane bottles. I think I'm going with this one.
Yeah.
There's mini bar bottles or like there's cans of beer, and it's not like they've got like the murder by death outrageous dark metal double triple IPA stout. Like, that's not what they got on. Like, you have 2 of those, they just get you sleepy. Like, that doesn't make you act a fool. So, yeah, she had 2, like, mild drinks and was like, no, if I don't pee right now, I'm showing everybody on this plane my business. Yeah, that's our winner for today, the naked woman on the plane. She is our What Is Wrong With You champion for the week. Brought to you by What Is Wrong, Top City Metal Supply. Metal cut to order when you need it. Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard, halfway between Frito-Lay and Forbes Field. That's going to wrap up this segment. I'm going to take a break because I got to go. I'm going to the Ken Butel Center. We've got Lewis Toyota High School basketball games.
Oh, I thought you meant like our What Is Wrong With You winner.
No, that is none of your business. If I do or not, that is none of your business or anyone else's. I am going to the Ken Butel Center at Hayden for our Lewis Toyota High School basketball games of the week. Hayden hosting Manhattan. Be on the air with those in about an hour's time, give or take. In the meantime, Spencer and Brendan have you the rest of the way on this edition of 580 Sports Talk.
Brendan and Spencer here with you on 580 Sports Talk for the rest of the show today. We've got in the neighborhood of about an hour or so left in this one. We'll send it out to Dan Lucero and the coach Larry Latimer for the Lewis Toyota High School basketball game of the week doubleheader coming up just before the start of the 6 o'clock hour. Centennial League action, as Dan just told us a moment ago. Manhattan versus the Hayden Wildcats. Both girls and boys you'll be able to catch right here on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9 coming up today. We've got some college basketball coming up this weekend as well. KU and K-State both in action. And of course, the K-State game you'll be able to catch right here on 580 WIBW. Why don't we just start real quick here, Spencer, with this K-State team? I feel like you've seen enough of them. You've seen enough of Oklahoma State already at this point, too, to have a pretty good feel for these two programs. I know K-State is struggling. I know that the offense has been stuck in the mud for a while now. I know that there's just not a whole lot of consistency. This team is missing a true point guard. I get those things. But they've still got to hammer Oklahoma State, right? I know they only won by 4 points the first time they played, and that was in Manhattan. And this is at America's favorite wrestling gymnasium, Gallagher-Iba Arena. I get it. But God, that Oklahoma State team is bad. K-State has to win. I think they will. I think the Cats are going to get it done. But man, you want to talk about soul searching? If you can't get it done against this team, oh boy, there's going to be a very unpleasant trip back from Stillwater, Oklahoma this weekend.
Yeah, and if you recall from the Kansas game against Oklahoma State the other day, Bryce Thompson went down with an injury for Oklahoma State. just a few minutes into the ball game. He tore his labrum, he'll have surgery, he'll miss the rest of the season. So there's not really a lot of guys there for Oklahoma State, especially when you lose Thompson.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, John Michael Wright's the only other guy who can score the ball at all, and I mean, he's okay. He's fine. He'd be a bench guy, maybe off the bench rotation guy for most other programs in the Big 12. Just a brutal team. Hard to watch. And this K-State team needs a win because it's not going to get any easier. You've got 3 consecutive ranked matchups after this one. We went over the schedule when we were talking with Fitz back on Wednesday. You've got KU, and it's at home, but it's KU. And we'll get to Kansas and its weekend in a moment coming up in Houston. Then you've got a game at BYU. They're top 25 in the country, number 22, and not easy to play in Provo. And then you've got to take on a TCU team. Now you get the Frogs in Manhattan, and that is a benefit for K-State. But I've told you before, I mentioned it right as we were starting Big 12 play a few weeks ago. I like this TCU team a lot. I think they've got plenty of talent. Jameer Nelson Jr. is having a really good season. He was a great transfer ad for Jamie Dixon. That's a really brutal stretch. Oh, and by the way, your 2 games after that, if you're K-State, you have to play BYU again, and you have to go to Austin to play Texas. And well, Texas desperately needs a win. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. Not exactly an easy place to go play, not exactly an easy team to go and face, even if I don't think Rodney Terry is all that great of a coach. So this one, K-State should win. I expect the Cats to get a win in this one, but man, if they cannot pull it off, oof, that is, I don't even want to think about what the outcome would be and what the future would look like for this Cats program if they can't win against one of the worst teams in all of the Power 5. I haven't even checked, and I know because they play in the Big 12, they've got a decently high Ken Pom rating. Where do you think, Spencer, if you were to guess, where do you think Oklahoma State slots in the Ken Pom numbers right now?
100 to 110?
You are actually pretty close, 124 right now.
I was giving them a little bit more credit.
That is actually the second worst mark in the Big 12.
Yep.
Can you guess the only team that's lower?
Well, I just pulled it up, so there's no point in guessing. It is West Virginia.
There you go. West Virginia. West Virginia is the only team that is lower in the Ken Pom numbers right now than Oklahoma State, which, I mean, give credit to the newcomers for being as strong as they have been over the course of the year. But, man, that is ugly. That is brutal. K-State's got to win this game. It's, again, a situation in which you just can't. I refuse to envision that K-State is going to lose this game. I'm going to just manifest positivity with this matchup. As for KU, Jayhawks, Houston Cougars, number 1 team in the Ken Pom, number 4 in the AP poll this week. The Houston Cougars taking on the number 8 Jayhawks. This is kind of unfamiliar territory for KU. Now, the Jayhawks have moved a little bit up in the Ken Pom recently. They're now number 15 in the country, 1 spot above Baylor, 1 spot below Marquette, 2 spots below Iowa State, which I know it's not supposed to be a reflective ranking. It's supposed to be a projecting ranking, but that's actually kind of funny because that feels like an exact perfect spot relative to their competition for KU to be. Here is something that, and I don't know if you know about this, but you got to experience Allen Fieldhouse the other day, and you know what that environment is like. And obviously, even though you hadn't covered KU before, you knew just from knowing college basketball, that's a tough place to play. KU almost always wins. The stats about KU playing in Allen Fieldhouse and Bill Self coaching in Allen Fieldhouse, they are preposterous. This is not your run-of-the-mill, really good team, though. This is maybe, arguably, the best team in the country in the Houston Cougars. Dan was just saying the other day he thinks that if Houston ends up winning this game, you can just lock up the conference championship and the conference player of the year for Houston and Jamal Shedd right away and just be done with those 2 conversations right now. KU is an underdog going into this game. A home Allen Fieldhouse underdog. And I know that KU has not been great this year. They've been very good. They've not been great, except for moments so far this season. There are problems that this KU team is probably not going to be able to fix between now and the end of the regular season. This team is built for March. You don't need a deep bench. You've got a really good starting 5. That's going to be fine for you. But this team has had issues so far in Big 12 play, despite not losing a game at home so far. The last time that KU was an underdog at Allen Fieldhouse. You have to go back to the 20-21 season, and you have to go back to a game against what was then the number 2 ranked team in the country, the Baylor Bears. And I need to pull up the exact score of that game. But I remember there was so much talk about, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Baylor, really? And that was COVID, and there was all sorts of weird stuff going on. KU ends up winning that game by 13 points. Big Dave, he went for 20 in that game. Jalen Wilson had 14 rebounds in the contest. I mean, KU was awesome in that game. And that ended up, if I'm not mistaken, that was senior day officially for KU. Played again against UTEP a few days later in a rescheduled game. But this is not something that happens all that often. And I know that things like the money line or the spread and that stuff, that doesn't impact whether or not you win or lose the game. But if you are telling me that you're making Kansas an underdog at Allen Fieldhouse, that just tells me you don't know a whole lot about Allen Fieldhouse.
Yeah, and I think this could be the game of the year in the Big 12. I really do. I mean, you have 2 top 8 teams right now. I mean, maybe Kansas shouldn't be in the top 10, as you and I talked about off there, a little bit on there beginning of the week. But if Kansas can round itself back into form, it could be the Big 12 game of the year. We could see an overtime thriller down Fieldhouse.
No, it's certainly possible. I'm right there with you. I think most people expect it to be. This is a crazy week of basketball coming up, just for college hoops in general in the national landscape. Obviously, you get North Carolina too, among other games. I believe Tennessee, Kentucky is also coming up on Saturday. So this is one of the marquee games, and it's 3 o'clock coming up on ESPN on Saturday. If KU wins this game, I think KU this season will have a collection of wins, including Kentucky, Tennessee, UConn, and then Houston. No team in the country would have 4 wins better than that. Absolutely nobody. That is why, and not that I want to quit this KU team, I don't want to phrase it like that, but that is why I continue to hammer home this Kansas team, 1 through 5, playing at its best, can be, and I would argue is, the single best team in the country. Now, they haven't always played like that, and if you don't get a gutsy all-time kind of effort from Kevin McCullough in this game, it's going to be really, really hard to beat a really good Houston team. McCullough's got to be good. I know he's not going to be 100%. Sounds like he is trending toward playing in this game. Honestly, if they had played this game earlier in the week instead of who they actually played against Oklahoma State on Tuesday night, Kevin McCullough probably plays in the game. Got to have him play well. Hunter Dickinson's got to be great. You've got to have Juwan Harris be great. But if KU can win this game, they've got the best collection of 4 wins any team in college basketball, and that is why they still deserve to be in the top 10, or at least still deserve to be in the national championship discussion this season. A couple other big games going on this week around the Big 12. Mentioned Texas. They really need a win. They're on the road at TCU, though, at Schollmeyer. That's going to be a fun game, I think. Iowa State, Baylor. Baylor still trying to sort of figure things out. It's Iowa State team. The calendar is flipped to February. Generally speaking, when TJ Otzelberger's teams fall apart, I think that game has a whole lot of intrigue as well. We've got to get to a break, though, for the national and local news here at the top of the hour. We'll come back short and final hour of the show. We'll get you headlines, coordinator audio, and a whole lot more. That's coming up in the final hour-ish on this Friday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Hey now, it's the final hour of 580 Sports Talk on this not quite Red Friday, the pre-Red Friday on 580 Sports Talk. Feel good Friday afternoon. I'm Brendan Dorzinski, joined by Spencer Dupuis, yours truly on the road with Washburn basketball. Spencer back home at the 580 studios on Huntoon Hill. Dan Lucero and the coach, Larry Latimer, are getting ready for our Lewis Toyota High School basketball game of the week doubleheader coming up tonight. 6 o'clock-ish, 5:45-ish start time for pregame coverage for our Game of the Week doubleheader. It'll be a Centennial League matchup, Manhattan at Hayden tonight from the Ken Butel Activity Center at Hayden High School. And again, as soon as we are done here and as soon as they are ready for us, we will send you over to our Lewis Toyota High School basketball Game of the Week with Dan and the coach. We've got plenty of basketball coming up on the Alpha Media Topeka family of stations coming up this week. That includes some college basketball action coming up tomorrow. The Kansas State Wildcats will take the floor. They will take on the Oklahoma State Cowboys down at America's favorite wrestling gymnasium, Gallagher-Iba in Stillwater, Oklahoma. That game is slated for a 1 o'clock tip-off. So pregame begins at noon, and again, tip at 1 right here on your home for the Wildcats and the K-State Sports Network, 580 WIBW. And coming up tomorrow with pregame beginning at 1:15 and tip-off for game 1 of the doubleheader at 1:30. The Washburn Ichabods will be over on our sister station, Country 106.9, as they get ready to take on the Riverhawks of Northeastern State. Yours truly will be on the call of those games from the Northeastern State Events Center. So that is all coming up tomorrow for college basketball, tonight for high school hoops on our Alpha Media Topeka family of stations. Coming up in this hour, we will get to the coordinators for the Kansas City Chiefs. Both Spags and Matt Nagy spoke earlier today. We will hear from both of them and what they had to say. Also, like we are wont to do on Friday afternoons when we get ready for high school hoops and have a little time to fill, we love to take your questions. We'll do some Ask Me Anything in this hour. Let us know if it's a question for Spencer. Let us know if it's a question for yours truly, and we'll get to as many as we can. So send them in on the text line, 785-272-9429, or send them in on the YouTube feed. 580 Sports Talk on YouTube is where you can find our live stream today. Ask us anything. Whatever you want to ask either one of us, let us know, and put it in the comments or put it in the text line inbox. Until we get there, Spencer, let's get to our 580 Sports Talk headlines for today. Have a handful of big ones. Why don't we go where we have done a lot of our headlines in the last couple of weeks at this point now? Let's go to the NFL coaching carousel. And while all the head coaching jobs have been filled up, there is some coordinator news and assistant coach news out there today. In fact, that includes some news that just broke moments ago.
I think we're on the same page.
Yeah, Leslie Frazier, the former head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, former defensive coordinator, most recently of the Buffalo Bills. He has been hired as the assistant head coach for the Seattle Seahawks. He is going to, I didn't know this until I saw it from Tom Pelissero of NFL Network moments ago. Apparently, he has been a long time mentor for Mike McDonald, who is the new head coach of the Seahawks. So he brings him on to be a guiding light, I guess, for that team. Generally speaking, I think it makes sense why teams do this, Spencer, why they bring in, the veteran, they bring in the mentor, someone to kind of get a new head coach, get their feet wet, get them prepared for the grind of being an NFL coach. I remember when the Packers did this, when they hired Matt LaFleur for his first head coaching gig, they kept Mike Pettin on as defensive coordinator. Even though Pettin's defense wasn't great, they did it because he had been a head coach before, and they thought that would be very valuable. The defenses were not any good, but they kept Mike Pettin around anyway. That's why. Similar kind of thing here, bringing in Leslie Frazier. I think the difference is Leslie Frazier is a good coach and has had good defenses over the course of his career. I think this makes plenty of sense for Seattle.
Yeah, I would agree as well. And I mean, we literally must have seated at the exact same time because I was going to bring that up as well. And, it's interesting the way kind of things ended in Buffalo. I don't know if it was a Sean McDermott. I think an outsider perspective, I feel like Sean McDermott and Leslie Frazier maybe clashed a little bit towards the end there.
Yep. That's what it sure seemed like. That's what a lot of the whispers out of Western New York made it seem like, that there was maybe not dislike or distrust, but certainly a clash of styles, a clash of personality. So that led to Leslie Frazier leaving there. So that's our first piece of coaching news. Let's just go right down the list.
I've got some breaking news that involves Kansas, but an NFL position coach. Bruce Feldman just tweets out, source Eagles DB coach DK McDonald is expected to go to Kansas to become the Jayhawks' new co-defensive coordinator and DB's coach. Before Philly, he spent the previous 5 seasons at Iowa State, where he served as the pass game coordinator and worked with the defensive backs. So that just popping off moments ago.
Okay, that is interesting.
Yeah.
So a couple of thoughts here, and man, I wish, and I know the week is about to end, put a pin in this to talk about this with Michael Swain coming up on Tuesday next week for Jayhawk Weekly, because Michael covered, and he went to KU, he's a KU grad, but before he full-time covered the Jayhawks, he covered Iowa State for 24/7. So he was up close and personal for a couple of really good Iowa State football teams, and Iowa State's defense was and has been nasty, or at least mostly nasty for the last few years, because I think a lot of people will see this hire and say, oh, the Eagles defensive backs coach, you mean that Eagles defense that was absolutely terrible and couldn't stop anybody in the passing game a year ago? They're hiring that guy. But Iowa State's defense was really, really impressive. DB's coach and pass game coordinator there, like you mentioned. I'm open to it. It's hard to replace Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson was the most important recruiter for this KU team. He was a really good position coach. He had guys like Kobe Bryant, Mello Dotson, Kenny Logan, all playing at an NFL caliber level. We know that both Mello and Kobe have their sights set on making it eventually to the NFL at some point. So I'm open-minded to it. I don't know that I love it, but I'm certainly open-minded to the hire. And I'm curious what Michael thinks and what his interactions were with McDonald back when he was up in Ames. Interesting move.
Yeah, I just saw it pop off, and I thought it'd be something you'd be interested in.
No, I'm glad you brought it up.
He says this is a really, really good hire for Kansas if true. McDonald was a stud on the Iowa State coaching staff. He just tweeted that out a minute ago, quoting Bruce Feldman's tweet. So instant analysis there.
Absolutely perfect. Yeah, that is why we bring Michael Swain on every single week, and we check in on everything he has to say about the Kansas Jayhawks. If he's into it, I am into it. I trust Michael 100%. So again, we'll ask him about that coming up on Tuesday. But I do like that. I like the idea of that hire for KU. I can certainly say that. Let's continue on with our 580 Sports Talk headlines for this Friday afternoon, Spencer. Let's get back to the NFL coaching carousel and some other assistant coach news from around the National Football League today. How about this one? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have hired their new offensive, or are reportedly hiring their new offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, who had bounced between the NFL and the University of Kentucky football team for the last couple of years. He had been the Rams offensive coordinator last season. This year went back to Kentucky to the college game and worked with their offense. Now he's heading back to the NFL again, where he will reunite with Baker Mayfield. As we remember, during the latter handful of weeks, latter half of the 2022 season, Baker played in Los Angeles with the Rams, so he worked with Liam Cohen. There are a lot, from what I have seen on social media, on message boards, Twitter, wherever so far today, a lot of mixed reactions to this. A lot of, hey, Kentucky's offense was not all that great. And it's, Sean McVay lost this guy a couple of times. Like, can he really be all that good? But the flip side of that is people saying, hey, man, look at the talent level that Kentucky had on the offensive side of the ball and who they had throwing the ball. It was impressive they were able to do anything offensively like they were able to accomplish this year. That's credit to Liam Cohen. And for Baker Mayfield, who has been through an unbelievable and truly inordinate number of offensive coordinators and play callers during his career, to have someone who he's got familiarity with, I have to imagine that's going to be a positive for him and probably will encourage him to re-sign in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that as well. I mean, I've read a report earlier that it could be encouraging to him. Maybe he'll take a discount too, because I read a report earlier today on Twitter. I scrolled past it before I could bookmark it, but people are saying he's going to get paid.
That's a great question. I really do want to know what that contract is going to look like, because I don't think you can pay him even what the Giants paid Daniel Jones last year. Now, granted, that contract was stupid, and Daniel Jones is not very good. You're not going to pay him the kind of money that I think Jordan Love is going to get this year. I don't think Jordan is going to reset the market for quarterbacks. Like, he's not going to get Herbert, Burrow, Lamar, Hurts money because he's only played 1 year. He was elite for a half a season, but he's only played 1 year while being in the league for 4. But I mean, do you go like 3-year deal at like a market-ish value, annual average, essentially 2 years with a 3rd-year option? That's kind of what I think for Baker, because I mean, he was so good at the start in Cleveland. Then he got hurt and the wheels just completely fell off, and he was so banged up and shouldn't have played through those injuries. Then last year was a disaster with the time in Carolina. Then with the Rams, he had the one moment with that come from behind win against the Raiders on Thursday Night Football. But other than that, a very forgettable 2022 season. This year, he was awesome. He was absolutely awesome this year for the Buccaneers. Maybe not perfect, maybe not the best stats, but a great fit for that team, for that team's culture, for the players they have. Just kind of drop back, chuck it, Mike Evans down there somewhere. So I would try to get him to maybe not, I'm not saying sign him to a Patrick Mahomes 10-year contract, but I do think you should probably try to get him at least a 2 or 3 year deal.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I think he proved himself that he can turn his career around, and I think that's what you want to look for. I mean, obviously it was not a great ending in Cleveland for him, and then just kind of bouncing last year from Carolina to LA, and then kind of, what was it? Didn't he get traded and then start the next like 2 days later or something? Or come into the game or something?
Yeah, I think he had signed with the Rams on like Monday or Sunday afternoon and then played that Thursday, barely knew the playbook, literally did not know the names of his teammates, came out and played well. We've got a comment here on YouTube from Vance. Then this is not the first time I've seen a comment like this today elsewhere. Bring back the at home with Baker Mayfield commercials. Yes, that's one of the best ad campaigns I've seen in a long time. And I'm not here to shill for Progressive Insurance, but those were awesome. Unfortunately, the Progressive is based in Cleveland, so it made sense when he was with the Browns, but they were great. They were very funny. I would also be happy to bring him back. He could hang out in the pirate ship. He could talk about insuring the pirate ship and the cannons. Free money. I'm an idea guy, Progressive. Reach out here. Other news today, we were just talking, Spencer, yesterday on the show, I believe, or I guess it was Wednesday. I wasn't on the show yesterday, but we were talking about Clint Kubiak, who was at one time the wide receivers coach for KU. His dad, obviously, Gary Kubiak, Super Bowl winning backup quarterback and head coach for the Denver Broncos. Clint Kubiak, though, is being hired by the New Orleans Saints to be their passing game specialist. That will happen after the Super Bowl, according to Adam Schefter. They can't get any deal done before now and then. So Kubiak will finish out his responsibilities with San Francisco and will then head on to New Orleans. I don't know. Kubiak's fine. Like, I don't really think he's this like great genius coach. I've never been like overwhelmingly impressed by any team that he has been with, but certainly not the 2015 Kansas Jayhawks, to tell you that freaking much. But you look at, he was with Minnesota for a couple of years and like, okay, fine, whatever. And San Francisco, they've got a really good team, but they've got a whole lot of really good talent. And we all know that Kyle Shanahan is the brains of that whole thing. So I mean, the Saints needed a breath of fresh air, but I don't know. I don't know how good of a coach Clint Kubiak really is.
Do you think that that Dennis Allen is trying to bring in somebody young just to see if he can save his job? Because how much longer can you go with he was a Sean Payton disciple, right? I think he was on the staff.
Are you talking about Pete Carmichael, who they let go, or Clint Kubiak?
I was talking about Dennis Allen. Yeah.
Dennis Allen. Yeah, because he had been the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, so I'm saying, how long are they going to hold on to that Saints era? And they're going to be like, we need to hit a full reset because I don't, your OC didn't really work this year. So will it work with?
I would have fired him this
guy.
Year. Yeah, I would have just said, forget it, cut loose, cut bait now.
Exactly.
And he had been with New Orleans for a few years prior to. I knew he had been there since 2015 as the defensive coordinator, but he had stints with the Broncos and the Raiders as their head coach. We remember that prior to that, and 4 other years with the Saints. So good call on that. I would have let him go this year and tried to hire a Vrabel or shoot a Belichick or somebody else. Maybe that's the team that could have swayed Ben Johnson to end up taking a head coaching job this year, Aaron Glenn, or I don't even know who else it could have been. Maybe they go get Todd Monken. I don't know. Someone else other than Dennis Allen, because that just feels like a dead team walking right now. A couple other pieces of information to get to. Nick Holtz, who was the former pass game coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars, he's being hired by the Tennessee Titans as their offensive coordinator. If you were to say, wow, really, the Jags pass game coordinator? Their play caller and offensive coordinator, Press Taylor, is the bigger name there. He's the one who calls the shots for a lot of that offense, along with head coach Doug Peterson. He is the real problem, that their passing game is really bad. I don't know why Doug Peterson is so loyal to him. He is not a very good offensive coordinator. But even bigger news, Spencer, for Tennessee, they are going to hire Bill Callahan to be their offensive line coach, somehow prying him away from the Cleveland Browns, where he was believed, and this is according to Robert Mays of The Athletic, heard this on the Athletic football show a couple of weeks ago, when Brian Callahan was hired in Tennessee, said Bill Callahan is the highest paid offensive line coach in the league, and he was certain about it. Tennessee was able to pull him away. You may have just noticed I mentioned Brian Callahan, the head coach of the Titans. That's Bill's son. So yeah, no duh, he was going to go leave and coach with his son.
Yeah, I've been expecting it to happen, actually, when I saw that I didn't realize Callahan was still coaching in the league, to be honest with you. And when I heard his son got hired, I was like, well, I looked him up and I was like, oh, well, he was with the Browns too, so he's definitely going to go.
Yeah, that one makes a whole lot of sense. Also, not a whole lot to go on, just rumors at the moment, but the Seattle Seahawks reportedly interested in bringing Ryan Grubb back to Seattle to be their offensive coordinator. If you know that name, he was the offensive coordinator for the Washington Huskies team that just played for a national championship just under a month ago. He interviewed for their head coaching job, didn't end up getting it, left to follow Kalen DeBoer to Alabama, but now reportedly the Seahawks are at least adding him to the list of their potential offensive coordinator hire. So an interesting note there as well. Spencer, what do you have for our 580 Sports Talk headlines today?
What do I have? Corbin Burns traded to the Orioles. The Orioles, I think, not that they weren't before, they're legit.
So Corbin Burns, formerly of the Milwaukee Brewers, has been really good for Milwaukee for a few years now. There had been talk all this past season, like all season long, that Milwaukee was going to trade one of their top end starters, both Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff. One of them was going to get traded. One of my bold predictions last year was that they would trade one of those starters by the deadline. They don't end up moving them in season, but now they do end up moving Burns. It just sounded like reports coming out of Milwaukee indicated the relationship was just strained. Burns knew that Milwaukee wasn't going to extend him, and Milwaukee knew, like, hey, if we're not going to keep him around, might as well go try to get something for him. So they move Burns for infielder Joey Ortiz, left-handed pitcher DL Hall, and the 34th pick of this year's draft. Don't forget that So that's an interesting question then, because I was going to say I think this is a much better deal for Baltimore than it is Milwaukee. Why do you like that Hall so much for the Brewers?
I like DL Hall. He's a promising player. I heard a lot about him from before. I got a lot of Orioles fans that I know, and they're very much in the DL Hall fan club.
Okay.
And I think they get another
pick.
They get another pick, like early pick in the draft. I mean, they get a chance to get another potential top prospect for themselves. Going to take a few years.
No, it could in 30, who knows what they do. Maybe they trade up with it because, baseball draft now for forever, you couldn't move picks. Now you can. Maybe they use that as, some sort of bargaining chip to move up somewhere else. But yeah, getting Corbin Burns, I think, is huge for Baltimore. And I don't know if their new ownership is going to continue doing this. And I expressed my, general concern about what private equity will look like for that Orioles team the other day when it was announced they were buying the team from John Angelos. But I mean, shoot, if you can go get a number one starter on the market for a couple of guys who already were blocked and not going to play for your team, that feels like a pretty big win. Maybe it's a win-win trade, and I don't know enough about these prospects to say one way or the other that Milwaukee's not getting something back. I do think, though, real quick, because we've got one other quick headline, then we get out of here. Milwaukee baseball, the Brewers, it's such a weird team because they operate like a small market, but they try to act publicly like they're always trying to contend. So they always do these half measures. They will bring in a big player, but then they know they're not going to keep them around, or they'll move guys right before the end of their contract. This is just kind of what Milwaukee does. And they're always going to be in purgatory because of it. They never commit to fully tearing it down because they're scared of losing revenue and losing fans. And Miller Park, I'm going to still call it Miller Park, is being filled by Cubs fans again, like it was back in the day. Or they don't want to actually spend the money, though, to go out and add a ton of players or extend their own homegrown guys. It's a very weird franchise, and it's a franchise that right now I don't put a whole lot of faith in to contend for a title because I don't think they operate like a team that's actually contending for a world title. One other quick headline, Spencer, before we get out of here for our headlines today. Sad one. Joel Embiid, the center for the Philadelphia 76ers, probably your leading candidate to be MVP again this year. He has a torn lateral meniscus in his knee. He is out for this weekend's games for Philadelphia while they evaluate a treatment plan. The meniscus is weird because there are some treatments where you can come back and play on it relatively quickly, but then there are some that will keep him out for a long time. It's all about, is it partial tear or full tear? Do you just trim it, or do you completely treat the whole thing? It's kind of a weird injury, and I remember when it happened to Derrick Rose, how strange it was.
Yeah.
This is a bummer, man. I know you're not a huge NBA guy, but Joel Embiid obviously means a lot to KU fans after his 1 year in Lawrence, 13-14. He's having an unbelievable season, and he should not have been playing these last couple of games. He clearly looked hurt.
Yeah, I saw some highlights and some stuff on Twitter, and it did say that people were thinking he was hurt previous to them finding out he had a torn meniscus.
Yeah, not a good situation at all for Joel. So here's wishing for a speedy recovery for the former Kansas Jayhawk and the guy who I think probably would have been, if he played the whole rest of the season healthily, the MVP of the NBA for a second straight year. That does it for today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. When we come back on the other side of this break, we're going to hear from the coordinators, both Nags and Spags. That's coming up here on 580 Sports Talk. We told you guys we'll take your Ask Me Anything questions for the rest of the show today, as long as we are on. We've got the coordinators coming up here in just a moment. We'll answer a few Ask Me Anythings. We've got one in here from Vance on YouTube. All right, Spencer, what are you picking? Star Crunch or Nutty Buddies or Zebra Cakes? Mark added that on YouTube as well.
We're going Nutty Buddy.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's where I'm going to. I've never been a big Zebra Cake guy. Star Crunch, I'll pass on that. I think I'd go Nutty Buddy. That's the best of the group there. We also have a text in from the 816, Mike in Missouri, listening to us. Mike, we appreciate you hanging out with us today. He says, you guys are all kids, but I'll tell you why the Lions can't win. We were talking about this back in the 4 o'clock hour. Do you remember the curse of the Bambino for the Red Sox? They finally broke that, but you have to go back to the curse of Bobby Lane back in the 50s for the curse that the Detroit Lions are dealing with. I will tell you this, Mike, I, being a fan of in my entire life of an NFC North team and of a rival of the Lions, I know all about the curse of Bobby Lane. And as long as that curse wants to exist, I am more than happy with the Lions staying out of the NFL championship picture. All your questions, comments you want to send us, we'll do Ask Me Anything until the end of the show. 785-272-9429 is the text line number, or you can hop into the comment section on YouTube. Right now, though, we're going to hear from the Chiefs offensive and defensive coordinators. In fact, let's start on the defensive side of the ball. Here's what Steve Spagnuolo had to say earlier on this afternoon.
All right, great to be here. Just blessed. The way I look at it is I'm blessed to work with these guys again for 2 more weeks. I've been praying for that every week we're in the playoffs here. So, and a beautiful day. We're in these walls again. I said that last week, right? I don't get to look outside. With that, I'll just open it up.
Last year, you guys faced San Francisco a few days after the Christian McCaffrey trade. Have you seen Kyle uses him evolve?
Yeah, thank God we got him then and not after they had him for 2 or 3 weeks. It's scary to watch all the weapons they have. He's one piece of it, a big piece of it, right? And even in that game, the first time he touched the ball, he ran it for a 7 yards, run or something, almost broke it out. I mean, he's explosive, real smart football player, but he's not the only one. They're all over the place on this particular unit.
Coach, Justin Reed has announced that T-shirts are at 1,000.
Oh man, humbling, very humbling. I'm going to shoot him for doing that. I'm trying to burn every T-shirt that I can find. I don't think I'm getting them all though.
Steve, last year when you played the 49ers, they also had a different quarterback. What are your coaching doing? What are you telling guys not playing this?
Yeah, all they got to do is put the tape on, Adam, in my opinion. We had some crossover film during the course of the year, but when you dive into it and you watch them, it's not a quarterback that's managing or all those tabs that they put on him. He's for real. Makes all the throws, really, really smart. And then what I didn't know, because I'm not seeing enough of it, is how athletic he is. I mean, this is another quarterback that when you cover everything back there and he finds a lane and a pass rush line can take off. He did it last week. He's done it in every playoff game and gets positive yards. That puts a lot of strain on us defensively. Thoroughly impressed with him.
Before we get too far away from it, Deion Bush is an interception.
Yeah.
Really good read. Can you just walk
Yeah, he did he did exactly the way we had practiced. And now here's another guy that doesn't get a lot of reps in practice, right? I was so happy for Deion. I love Deion. He's been with us for a couple of years. And, after a year ago, he was on the 53, if I have it right, and played a lot of special teams. And then this year, he begins the year on the practice squad. And yet he's always out there first. He's always rallying with the guys in the secondary. I was really happy. He played it perfectly. He had the right eyes for it. He helped on one side, took that away, and then made himself available. And, in those those balls that look like they're easy to catch, those are the hard ones. But he caught it. But he almost made a mistake and started running out. And then he remembered, and it's a big play. God bless.
From personnel standpoint, how do you replace Charles Omeni?
Yeah. I tell you, you don't replace that height and that length that he has. But, we'll get guys to step in there. Felix will probably have to step in. And, everybody's got to up their game in a Super Bowl anyway. Hopefully, like last week, I think it was decent in the first half where we didn't have to play as many plays. But if the play count gets up, that's where it gets tough for, George being out there a lot and Mike. And that's when we got to have guys to step in there.
How much do you appreciate kind of those secondary rotational guys like Matt Dixon always stepping in?
Yeah. Yeah, Mike Pinnell, and I mean, we don't even have Derrick. Derrick Nottie is a key to what we do inside, and losing him is a big blow. And Brian Cook's not here anymore. I mean, we've lost guys along the way, and to your point, guys have stepped in. I think that's a reflection of the coaches, the assistant coaches defensively, that do a great job with these players, even when they're not expected to play in the game, and then the players responding to it. But we got a good group of guys that way, and we've needed it. I mean, we've gone through the season where we've lost guys here and there. Drew was out of game. Nick's been out. Drew steps up, and I think they like rallying around each other. Who knows what's going to happen in this game where we may need somebody to do the same thing.
Are you surprised that you haven't lost a few assistants along the way just with how?
Yeah, very surprised. I mean, all these guys are deserving of being coordinators, and there'll be some eventual head coaches in this group. But, everybody has their reasons for tabbing guys from wherever, but hopefully, God willing, these guys will get their opportunity too.
Appreciation level for just getting to this point. You've gotten to this point as a coach more than most guys who do this business with a different organization. What's it mean?
Yeah, I don't know, somewhere in the off season or in the past here, we've been talking, I was having a conversation. I think it's a huge accomplishment to win a conference championship. And yet, we all know that when you go to this game, somebody loses, and then what do they call it, the loser. I don't feel that way. It's harder to win. It's almost harder to win a conference championship than it is to win a one-game, Super Bowl. So I value it, and to get to this point, I think is an extreme accomplishment. And when you think that way, you think about all the people that you did it with, the coaches, the players, and all the staff around it. I just think it's a great way to celebrate a lot of work. This began, I think, July 17th. It's February 2nd. It's a long grind, but to a man and a woman, all the people that we got working here, they've done a tremendous job.
Steve, how much does Mike Edwards' ability unlock? Just to read, I know you guys use blitzes on playing second level. How much does Mike Edwards play?
Mike has a huge play in that, and because he's one of those cerebral guys that I keep talking about. And again, I think we've mentioned this before. Mike came new here. It's been 1 year in the system. It's not always easy to do, but it tells you a lot about him mentally. And he's a natural football player. He'll see things out there and get a feel. Might not be exactly the way we worked on it in practice, but he finds a way to make a play because he's just a natural football player. That's big.
You mentioned Felix a minute ago.
Yep.
What's his readiness to be able to help?
Yeah, I mean, we feel real confident with where Felix is. I mean, I know that we've talked about this. Like, let's say we were back in September, October, and I know the questions have come at times where we're rotating guys. We've rotated linebackers, we've rotated D-line, we've rotated corners with Josh and Jalen. And I know that I'm pretty sure I said at the time that part of the reason we do it is to be ready later when guys have to step in. And Felix is a pretty good example. Like, he would get some plays here and there. I mean, again, I've said this before. It wasn't a reflection on what Felix wasn't doing or not doing, but the other guys are playing pretty good. And then Charles came. But now, hopefully, the fact that Felix has played some in games, that he'll be able to step in there and perform pretty well for us.
So that is Steve Spagnuolo speaking earlier today. Before we go from Spags to Nags, Spencer, we've got a couple questions here. We're going to go rapid fire here through a couple of Ask Me Anything questions. We've got one here from the 785 on the text line. Spencer, for you, what is your favorite Super Bowl and why?
Ooh, all the Redskins Super Bowls. That's it. All of them.
All of the ones that came before you were alive?
Yes, but they have something called NFL Films. So
that's
shout
true.
out NFL Films for
that is 100% true.
Letting me know what that was like.
This one from the YouTube comments. Favorite Mel Brooks movie?
I don't have one.
Spaceballs, easily. Spaceballs might be my number one favorite movie overall, period.
I've never seen
also,
Spaceballs.
One other one from the 7-8. Bruh. Never? Oh my God. We'll fix that. We're gonna make amends for that. One more from the 785. I think this one's specifically for me. I was wondering, when you use the term "to be honest with you," I think to myself, had you thought about telling a lie but had a change of heart? LOL. Yeah, no, I've actually gotten that before. I've had people say that to me. You say that a lot. Like, were you not gonna tell me the truth? No, I'm just like trying to really make a point. Like, this is my honest feeling. I was not intentionally going to tell anyone a lie. We've got one more coordinator to hear from, though, Spencer. Let's get to Matt Nagy and what he had to say this afternoon.
Coach, we've talked in the past about just the pendulum between offense and defense.
This year, we've seen it playing offense, not just yours. Have you seen that? Do you feel that? Do you feel like defenses are kind of catching up, but not what like your guys have been doing, but just spread concepts?
Maybe a little bit. I think probably the numbers would say that as well. You look at it and, these offenses adapt every year. Every 5 years, you see certain plays, concepts that usually work. And then I can take it to a year by year. I mean, you can see in a 3-week span, a particular player concept that works. And then other teams are doing it. And then all of a sudden, 3 or 4 or 5 weeks later, then it gets shut down. And so you kind of take that year by year. There's concepts that teams do. And defenses, I think these coordinators have done a really good job of really mixing things up. Not predictable. There's not a lot of tendencies. And so with that, you have to be able to adjust to that. So I would say, yeah, there's probably a little bit to that. Which makes you on offense, make sure that you really know where you're going to go with the throws, how you're going to block, et cetera.
But in the AFC title, what did you see in your review first half versus second half as far as what was that?
I thought that coming out to start that first half was so important to get a lead, to stay ahead of the chains, not getting 3rd and long in that game. When Pat made that throw to Travis for the touchdown to start, I knew we were going to be in good hands throughout the rest of the game. That was just such a special throw, a great catch. It was really good defense by them. But, you get some momentum, you get some first downs. We would have loved to have that screen at the end there to go up 21-7, didn't get it. And then the second half, just too many 3 and outs. I do think some of that was how the game was going on our defense versus their offense. Field position wasn't as good. We had one where we got to stop, backed up, and we ended up moving the ball to about midfield. We punted them down and flipped the field darn near, whatever it was, 80 yards, 90 yards. And that's a part of that game. So we know we got to be better, and we weren't as good that second half.
Kadarius Toney hasn't played in a while. Mm-hmm. How did he look in practice yesterday?
Yeah, I thought he looked good. For us, it's a day-by-day thing for him and where he's at. And, but all the guys right now, it's kind of an interesting week just because you do have that extra week. So just really mentally keeping the pace up for everybody, but also physically trying to make sure that you don't lose your conditioning as well. But he did good.
Is he in a good, for lack of a better term, headspace?
Yeah, I think
he has to play some?
I think so. Yeah, and again, we're evaluating all that with every player every day, just kind of seeing where they're at. We want to be able to see it in practice. It's so important to be able to see these guys practice and see how they're doing individually, and then how they fit within the scheme and what we have.
Matt, you've spoken to this before, but in what ways do you see Travis set kind of the tone and tempo that maybe we don't see, whether it's practice or games, locker room?
Yeah, it's real. He's the energy that he brings is so contagious, and it's he's been doing this a long time with a lot of success. And when he brings that energy, people just feed off of it. And it's not easy to do that every day in practice and then take it to the game. Game day, he's always in a good place. Throughout the week, he's done a really good job this year of making sure that we follow him and Pat with that energy. I mean, our offense right now is in a good place feeding off of energy. And I think when those two guys have that energy, they follow.
Matt, with Mark Wes at the end of the game and having the field of the game, just wondering if you kind of recap. Obviously, it was not in a great place mid-season with the draw against the Eagles, but just his ability to bounce back and what you've seen from him.
Yeah, it shows who he is. I mentioned it last week in this same meeting that Quez is a guy that's internally driven. He's mentally very resilient. He knows more than anybody that throughout the middle of the season, when there was some things going on, not just with him, but our offense in general, that we all look at ourselves. And so it's just crazy when you look back at that moment. I remember being on the field after he made that catch and just thinking, man, life is crazy. What he's gone through individually, what we've gone through. And for him to, stick through that, make a play, for Pat to trust him to throw him the football. I think that kind of in a nutshell explains who we are as a team, let alone more detailed our offense. The last play of that game comes down to that, and everyone executed. It wasn't just his good route. It wasn't just a good throw. There was good protection. There was other guys running good routes, and it ended the game in a moment that we needed that play.
Is that difficult to call that play in that moment?
No. Nope. And be completely honest with you, not at all. I mean, really, if the play is in a certain way, it's in with no hesitation, no reservation. So we put that play in, and I think everybody's seen the clip Pat saying that he, give me the ball in that situation, and that's what we get internally a lot. So in that moment, we're going to give him the ball, and he usually good things happen.
We'll try a couple more guys. We'll go Todd, and then we'll go PJ. And we'll
Yep.
try to hear back.
Coach, I know NFL is a copycat league in some respects. You kind of talked about that with the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Is Kyle Shanahan a guy that you might look at in the offseason, kind of see the innovative things he's doing? Is he a guy that you guys kind of look to?
Absolutely. He does a lot of great stuff. And I think the thing with Coach Shanahan is that he stays creative, does a lot of the stuff that they do really well, and finds different ways to window dress it. And he's got great players and great scheme. And when you match that together, you get to this point. So ton of respect for him. It's not something that's happened 1 or 2 years. It's been his whole career, and it's in the run game and the pass game.
PJ?
Pat was telling us about the preparation process of how y'all would go through certain plays and how your time in Chicago kind of helped you call plays in these critical situations. Just how did that influence you being the head coach of Chicago?
Just situationally, being able to listen to the players and hear their input is so valuable, especially, situational football is always important. When you get to the playoffs, when you get to these games, you want to make sure you're as prepared as you can possibly be. So we try to be really good at talking through and communicating situations. And sometimes those situations never come up, but it's that one time that they do. And when they do come up and they work, those are the ones that are fun because you can always use that for your next meeting. And I think the most important part of those meetings that we have that I've learned as a coach in general, regardless of position, is listen to your players' input. If they trust the play and they have conviction in a play, it has a much better chance of working than if you like it more than that.
So that is Matt Nagy earlier on today, rounding out our peek at what the coordinators for the Kansas City Chiefs had to say as we gear up for Super Bowl 58, just 9 days away. By the way, we have another question here. Spencer, do you have a favorite Madonna album? That's from the 785.
No, I don't.
I mean, I know many of her songs. The only album I know is Like a Virgin. I don't know the names of any other albums. So we're going to go with that one. And we're going to go into a commercial break. Any other questions you want to send us? We'll try to jam them in the final segment. Then we will send you off to our Lewis Toyota High School basketball game of the week doubleheader between Manhattan and Hayden at the Butel Center. That's coming up in just a little bit. But first, we'll wrap things up with the final word coming up on the other side of this break right here on 580 Sports. Wrapping up 580 Sports Talk on this Feel Good Friday afternoon. Don't forget, we've got our high school basketball game of the week doubleheader brought to you by Lewis Toyota coming up in just a few moments. We'll send you out to the Butel Center at Hayden High School for Hayden versus Manhattan. We've got K-State basketball coming up tomorrow, noon pregame show, and then a 1 o'clock tip-off for the Kansas State Wildcats and Oklahoma State Cowboys. And tomorrow, 1:15 pregame start time, 1:30 game one tip on our sister station, Country 106.9, Washburn Ichabod's basketball doubleheader action on the road against the Northeastern State Riverhawks. Spencer, before we get to the final word, what are you up to? What's on tap for you this weekend?
Not much. Maybe getting some furniture. That might be a key. I have no couch or table, but I have like a breakfast bar that's built in. So yeah, some furniture might be in the future for me.
Furniture. No, man, I get it. When I first moved into the apartment that my wife and I now share, when I moved in back in 2017, my couch was actually just two office chairs, just two swiveling office chairs. So no, I totally get it.
Gone 3 weeks without a microwave, and a couple times I've had to bring what I needed the microwave. It ended up being my lunch. So I brought it to work to have a microwave, but I do need to get myself a microwave. I always forget when I'm at the store.
No, I get it. I will obviously be with the Washburn basketball team for the doubleheader against Northeastern State tomorrow. We've got to get out of here for the game of the week. So Spencer, you got 20 seconds. What's your final word?
My final word is Dan Quinn. Let's go.
Very, very committed with that. Let's go there. Final word for me is, look, is Houston the better team than KU overall? Probably at this stage, honestly, but if you're telling me you're going to let KU be an underdog at Allen Fieldhouse, you bet I'm taking the Jayhawks in that one. That'll do it for us this week. The Lewis Toyota High School Basketball Game of the Week doubleheader is coming up right after this break. For Dan Lucero, who's at the Butel Center, and for Spencer Dupuis, I'm Brendan Dworzinski saying so long this week, and we'll talk to you coming up next Monday right back here on 580.